Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
These words are from a few past bit course participants. Joyce writes, "For me, bits have been the most confusing part of having horses. You've made it very easy to understand. Not everyone is good at teaching, but you are. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. It definitely benefits the horse and rider relationship." Catherine writes, "You make the content very watchable. It could be very dry material otherwise, and I hadn't thought about this, but part of what might have been putting me off all these years is the thought that learning would be a bit of a drag. If learning is made interesting, any subject can be appealing. You have a God-given talent for this. I'm surprised you're not on TV." And Lauren says, "Finally, I have been looking for someone to explain bits in an easy to understand and concise way. This makes so much sense as to what the bit is doing when I am giving pressure with my reins. I feel like everything else I've watched made this so complicated, and I still never understood the mechanics." Would you consider yourself confident in your selection and usage of bits? Do you trust everything you've been told about bits and how they affect your horse? How's that social media research coming along? Well, I've got an offer for you to refuse. A large chunk of my career as a horseman has been dedicated to learning how and why bits function and sharing that knowledge with others. I want to help you and your horse, and I know that I can. If you'll allow me to guide you on this understanding, I make you 3 promises. This will be worth the time and money you put into it. This will not seem like a chore. I've taken a lot of pains to make the content easy to watch, funny, and engaging. And you'll never look at or ride a horse the same way again. We've just opened enrollment for our next masterclass of thebitcourse.com. Cohort Foxtrot will begin on January 9th. Do you want to supercharge your progress with your horse this year? Do you want to add a professional service and certification to your repertoire? Right now, we've got our holiday sale in effect. From now until December 31st, both our self-guided and masterclass bit courses are 25% off. Simply use coupon code YANDHOW, no spaces, at checkout. Give your riding the best gift of all, knowledge and hands as light as a snowflake, yet skilled as a surgeon's. Just to sweeten the deal, the self-guided course access has been extended to 21 weeks. So you can get it for yourself now and still have plenty of time to get through it after the holidays. Purchase of the self-guided course also comes with a $300 credit on any upcoming masterclass course, in addition to any other deals we may have going on at the time. While masterclass courses are our flagship and most intensive course, you can't go wrong with taking the self-guided course anytime. You must purchase before the 31st to take advantage of the 25% off deal, though. We'll see you in the course.
We've got a very special guest today, Mr. Steve Hemphill of Applause. Steve is a member of the Board of Representatives of the governing body of the International Jousting League and a Level 4 jouster with the International Jousting Association. He is the owner of Applause Limited and the executive producer of Lists on the Lake, the largest competitive jousting tournament in the world. He has also been dubbed the Texas Jousting Guru by Fox Sports Australia for his part in their broadcast as a jousting commentator. When Steve's not involved with jousting, he can be found enjoying dressage, eventing, and fox hunting with his faithful equine companions, Lucky Strikes Gold, AQHA horse, Tinkerbell, a Frisian Percheron cross, and the Asuko Moreno Sugar, an Andalusian thoroughbred cross. Steve has had a love of medieval times since the 1980s when he studied it in college. In 2003, he got his first horse and decided to combine it with his love of medieval history. Since then, he has produced and competed in a number of medieval equestrian events around the world, which showcase competitive jousting and other medieval equestrian sports. He's won multiple individual and team titles in jousting, melee, and skill at arms in the U.S., Canada, France, England, and Denmark, including a two-time recipient of the Most Chivalrous Award at the European Championships in Denmark. Steve, how are you today?
Doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I should also mention, for those of you not watching the video, I am joined here by my son, Colt. And Colt is really the reason that we're having this podcast. So, Colt, do you want to tell everybody why you're here today?
Well, first of all, I found out and reached out to Mr. Steve, and we are here because I found an interest in what he does and thought it would be great for the podcast.
I think if kids show initiative, then it should be rewarded. So here we all are. Well, Steve, we start everybody off with our icebreaker questions, and these are for points and prizes. So you want to be on your A game here, okay?
See what I can do.
If you were a Jedi, what % chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
Oh, 0. Absolute 0%.
Okay, hence the chivalry awards, I guess.
That's correct.
Morning or evening? Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I am absolutely a night owl. In my heraldry that I wear on my horse and on my shield, the main charge is an owl. And there's a really good reason why it's an owl, is because I am not a morning person.
Okay. How long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
I don't. 0%.
Okay. Is that the lactose or the sugar, or what's your affliction to cookie?
Preference. Now, I'll eat a cookie and take a drink of milk, but I won't ever dunk them in the milk.
I see. Okay. You want to ask this one?
How many lances does it take to put in a light bulb?
How many lances? I'm not sure how many lances, but I could probably tell you how many ground crew that it would take to screw in a light bulb. And it's every single one of them that we can get. Because we can't do it without them.
You want to tell them your answer?
I said a lot for that one.
Yeah. Oh, you got me on that. Oh, I got to write that one down. That was really good. See, you and I have the same sense of humor. And all of my friends that may end up watching this will totally be disappointed in me not getting that. Well done, Colt.
Thank you.
What, in your opinion, is the best horse movie?
The best horse movie. Ooh. Well, unsurprisingly, I'm a big fan of A Knight's Tale. But I especially really like Hidalgo. Hidalgo's a really good one. I wasn't into horses when I was a kid. I rode horses, but I wasn't into the whole horse movie culture kind of thing. So a lot of them, like the Black Stallion and stuff like that, I didn't see those until I was an adult. And they're good, but as far as seeing new movies when they first came out as an adult, once I got back into horses, I would have to say, A Knight's Tale ranks way up there. Hidalgo ranks way up there. Oh, here's another one that might throw you a little bit, and that's Avatar. Because one of the things that I teach is I am confident, I don't know for a fact, but I'm confident that James Cameron is a horse person, because when he wrote the script for that, in the early scenes where they take their ponytail and they plug it into the mane of whatever animal they're riding, and there's a connection, that, in my opinion, is what no matter what discipline you have with horses, that is what we're striving for, is that connection, so that you can be one with your horse. And when you reach it, it truly, truly is magical. So I would add Avatar is one of the better horse movies.
I like it. Yes, sir. What skill or technique do you not have with a horse that you admire in someone else and wish you did have? So this could be body work, farriery, anything horse related whatsoever.
The thing that I am working toward more than anything right now Now I've got a background in just riding kid riding a horse on the ranch when I was a kid. And then as I got older and got into the medieval side of things, I started upping my game to try and ride better in those medieval pursuits. Jousting itself, a lot of people think it's real easy. You just go as fast as you can down the tilt, but it's not. There's a lot of stuff going on which you can get into later on. But the discipline that I feel I am the least adept at is another thing that we typically do is the melee. It's also called the bayord, and where we are riding around on our horses, much like in a war situation, and we either have tourney batons, which are oak clubs, wooden clubs, or sometimes we'll do it with actual swords, and we try and gain advantage and hit our opponents. And there's quite a lot of sword work involved in that. My background, I've got a lot of background in fencing, so handling a sword is not that difficult for me, but getting my horse into the proper position is. And a lot of the really high level dressage movements came out of the war field. So we need to know how to be able to turn our horses and maneuver them very, very quickly. I was raised in more of a Western situation, but I'm more of an Eastern or classical situation now. So that the thing that that I have been working with the most, and it's not just me, but it's the horses, is being able to do canter pirouettes.
I got a better one for you than that. Yeah, that's actually not what you want to do.
Yeah, and so we want to be able to move in tight places in order to gain an advantage. It's sort of like, I call it two-dimensional dogfighting. And if we can ride up on somebody and engage them and then do a canter pirouette to get out, that is really high level moves. But it's a family of maneuvers. It's not just the pirouette. That's, in my mind, it's kind of the culmination, but it's not necessarily. But being able to maneuver your horse, whether it's a terre-à-terre or a courbette or whatever, that can facilitate fighting in close quarters on horseback, is what I'm really most interested in working on these days.
So this is one of those things that I have not ever understood. And I come from a cutting horse background.
Yeah.
And the ideal way to get from going this direction to that direction is to turn on the outside hind, not an inside hind. So like the pirouette, if I'm on a cow horse and you do a pirouette, I'm going to cut your head off from behind in a heartbeat. You won't even be halfway turned around, and I'll be waiting on you for the ideal angle to chop your head. It's so much more efficient and quicker.
But it also depends on how you define inside and outside, because when you are involved in approaching someone, it might be inside in one situation, it might be outside on the other situation. So rollbacks, pirouettes, all that stuff is in the toolbox, and you got to be able to do them very quickly without even thinking about them. You can't think, okay, I need to set myself up so I can do this maneuver. You just got to be able to do it. And that's actually the easy part because our body position to get them to do something is very connected to the best way for a horse to do that as well. And I've always been curious, which came first, the horse or the person? How did that work? I'm really fascinated about that aspect of it.
I like the challenge of different things like this, like roping could be in this, other things where you have a dual job there. One is riding the horse and the other is using your hands to accomplish some task. And the balance that I might need to accomplish that task may not equate to the balance I need to have the horse do the thing. Polo. So there's always kind of that conflicting. That to me is where it turns more to art than science, where the horse has to have felt that and knows that, I listen to the leg, not the lean, or whatever the thing is going on here. And so, adds definitely another layer to all of that stuff.
Now, you should mention roping. You probably know this, but in the Spanish tradition, when they're sorting cows, do you know what it is they use?
The grocery pole, yes, sir.
Yeah, so a lance started off as a lance, and so there's a lot of techniques that we incorporate using that too, because we can fight on horseback with spears, and we would use them very much in the same sort of situation, where we can be in the best position with a lance to be able to facilitate the best attack on your opponent. So it's a lot of interesting things that come together like that.
Very cool. What would you say is the most important quality of a horseman?
I'm thinking because I know what it is, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to articulate it. Listening to your horse. There's a communication that goes on between you and your horse, and you need to understand their language to be able to best communicate with them. I'm a big proponent of a horse is not a machine. It's a living animal, and you don't make it do what you want it to do. You have a conversation with them, and just like I would with my friends, like, hey, I want to put on 65 pounds of armor and hit you with a lance at 50 miles an hour. You want to do that with me? And my friend might go, no. And so I like this friend. So I'm like, I think you would be good at it. Let's, what could I do to convince you to do it? As opposed to going out there and making my friend do that. Same thing with a horse. I don't want to make a horse do it. I want a horse to be able to do it because they want to do it. And being able to listen to your horse to know whether or not they are in the mood, or if they're talented enough, or if they've got the right mindset for it, or whatever. I think communication and listening to your horse is the most important thing.
Very good. Well said. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer?
Oh, I can part somebody's hair with my trailer, or a tractor, or a skid steer. I'll be humble though. I'll say a 9.1. Now that's one of my natural superpowers. It's being the back of trailer. In fact, I just bought a 0-turn mower recently, and I've got a little utility trailer that I've been putting stuff on, and I've recently learned how to. That's a challenge, man. Backing up a 0-turn mower with a trailer behind you, because you don't have a mirror. And if you turn around and look, you're going to start to turn it. That's a challenge to be able to back with a 0-turn mower, but I'm leveling up in that.
Bay or sorrel, or any other particular color that you favor?
Well, I'm going to lean towards sorrel because my first horse that I bought myself was Lucky, American quarter horse. And he was just as bright as a shiny new penny. And he, especially in these beautiful Texas sunsets, I'd go out there and he would just glow copper. And he was something else, let me tell you.
Colt is there with you. This is one of those questions I kind of famously say is I intended it as a throwaway question. I figured it'd be 50-50. I was just trying to ease up some time, and it has wound up being like 90% choose bay horses. So now we have the Bay Horse Mafia. We've got some merch and t-shirts and stuff, but Colt is as diehard a sorrel horse guy. If you say bay horse, he's not going to talk to you anymore. So that went well.
We don't do eventing as much as we used to, but when we did eventing, there was somebody who was frequently there, and their horse's name was Just Another Bay Warm Blood. There's a lot of bays out there. Now, the second horse we had was an off-the-track thoroughbred named Sonata, and she was a bay, but she was my wife's horse. But in my opinion, there are no bad colors in a horse, and I really truly mean that. It's the horse. Doesn't matter what color they are. But Lucky is the only chestnut, sorrel, that I've ever had. And I do miss him. You had introduced him at the beginning of this, but unfortunately he died 3 years ago on July 3rd, 3 years ago. And I miss him dearly. He was a great guy, but he was 29 years old. I had jousted on him about a week before he died. So he was going strong. Just went out there and he had a heart attack and just fell over.
Yes, sir. It's tough to lose the good ones for
It
sure.
it truly is.
Well, see in the background here, I have an idea. I know the answer to this question, but dogs or cats?
75% dogs, 25% cats, because we got cats. I was not a cat person until I found a kitten. It wasn't any bigger than that in the engine of my truck in downtown Houston on a blustery winter afternoon, and that little cat won me over. But I've had dogs all my life, and right now I've got two Vizslas, which are Hungarian pointers, and I just adopted. All of them have been adopted except for one. The very first one I purchased from a breeder, but the rest of the five I've adopted. I've gotten kind of a reputation in the Texas Vizsla community for taking unusual or difficult cases and turn them into great members of the dog society. So I'm kind of proud of that. And my newest one is Winston, and he's 4 years old. He's sitting right here off camera, and I got him about 4 months ago. And so yeah, dogs.
Normally I follow up with what breed, but I think we got that covered there as well. So in our phone call, we kind of mentioned this, but you actually hunt these dogs? You're a bird dog guy in the field?
I used to. I'm kind of a bird dog guy, but not in the way that most people would think. As we had discussed, I am not a gun hunter. I'm a master falconer. And the Vizsla was one of the original dogs used for falconry. And that's why I was interested in them back in the mid to late 90s when I got my license, my falconry license. And I wanted to get a Vizsla. And I have trained most of them to hunt with birds of prey, although the current two that I haven't had a bird for a while, so I haven't actually used them to hunt falconry with. But I do still maintain my license, and I'm here in Texas. I can go down to South Texas and get trap out of the wild one of the very best hunting birds in the world, and that's a Harris hawk. And so every year around early September every year, I think, do I want to go down to South Texas and trap a Harris hawk? And so far it's been, I got this going on and that going on. And I want to be able to spend the time with the bird, the proper amount of time with the bird too. So, horse, hawk, and hound, that's a lot to manage.
For sure. I thought you were going to say peregrine there for a minute. I know that they've got a big deal where they trap peregrines for whatever reason on the beach in South Texas. And I've never even been with somebody flying a peregrine, but peregrines in the beach don't seem to doesn't match in my head, but for whatever reason it does. So.
Because the funnel for all of the migration route in North America goes down through South Texas. And so in the fall when they're migrating south, there's just millions of migratory birds going through Corpus and Matagorda Island and all that. And that's why they trap them on the beach, because they're just everywhere flying south. And I have had two peregrines, two male, or what we call tiercel peregrines, and they're like flying a Lamborghini. They are high maintenance birds. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of more of a Chevy truck guy. So my first bird was a red-tailed hawk. And Harris hawks are, as you know, the only social raptor, and you can hunt them in packs. And some of the best falconers in the world that fly Harris hawks are right in your neck of the woods. And they have really raised it to an art. And I got a chance to see and hunt with them back many, many years ago at a North American Falconry Association meet. So Harris hawks are something else. I like them, and they're easy to work with. They're easy to train. And because I'm in Texas, I could go trap them, fly them for a season, and then let them go. So if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. We won't go too far off on the falconry road, but it is good to have
that too.
Well, I was going to say so not all Harris hawks will go for birds. Right. So like a lot of people might not know this, but things like red tails and Harris hawks, they're kind of built like tanks. Yep. And they are normally going to hunt rabbits and things like that. But like the peregrine's a true falcon, and it hunts almost exclusively other birds. So
my first red tail on about the second or third hunt. Now, this is a male, 32 ounces. So for the rest of the community, that's a little bit big for a male red tail, but it's small for a Harris hawk because the females, of course, are larger than the not Harris hawk, red tail hawk. Males are smaller than the females are in the bird world. And on like my second or third hunt, I scared up a jackrabbit, and he was able to tail chase it and catch it. But because young bird, he didn't grab it by the head, he grabbed it by the butt, and he got bucked off. Then I went to my first NAFA meet, and he tail chased a cock pheasant, and he caught that. But again, he got a tail full of feathers, or talons full of feathers, and it got away. And my sponsor was shocked that he could do either one of those two things. He was a good bird, real good bird.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
I'll say, I can stop you right there. You don't have to finish the sentence. No. No. Extra onions do, though.
Okay. Well, what are your pizza toppings? What do you like?
Cream. I like everything on there with extra onions. Lots and lots of onions. I'm a big onion.
Sounds good to me. Are you a cook?
I can cook, but I bow to the expertise of my wife, who was much better. But I have been known to pull out some French cuisine recipes from time to time for a special occasion. So I can, I can cook, but I don't do it a whole lot. I save it. I go for quality, not quantity.
I see.
I was going to say, in fact, that's my motto for jousting. It's Unus sed Leo, my heraldry I was telling you about before with the owl on it. My motto is Unus sed Leo. It's UNUS SED LEO. And it means one, in Latin, it means one, but a lion. And I'll tell you later on what the story behind that is.
Okay. Would you share with us your horse industry related pet peeve, please?
I think probably at the top of my list, and this is because I've done so much English stuff, dressage, eventing, that sort of stuff, is the propensity for people to use roll cur in dressage. And I'm much more into natural horsemanship and into classical dressage type riding as opposed to the modern stuff that you see today. And I think that's one of the worst things. That's that. And with gaited horses, Tennessee walkers, soaring, that sort of stuff. That's anything that, because I was like, I'm out there with my friend, riding with my friend, and I don't want to hurt them. I want them to do it because they want to. I want to convince them to do it the way that I want to. I don't want to make them do it the way that I want them to. So yeah, anything that brings pain to a horse to get them achieve a goal, don't like it. That's my big pet peeve.
Yes, sir. How about feral or spoiled? So if you had a new horse added to your string that you're wanting to fool with, would you rather not enough human contact or too much?
So my problem is that I like a challenge. So I will see horses all the time that I'm like, I think I could fix that. And I have to tell myself, no, you can't save every horse. You can't do every horse. So it's kind of a mixed thing. I have enough experience that will at least get me started, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. So if I run into a situation where I'm in over my head, I've got a lot of friends, a lot of professional friends who are better horsemen than I am, and I can go to them and ask. But I'm pretty much willing to take on anyone. I thought, or there was a time, and I'm still not convinced that I won't do this someday. I would really, really like to rescue a Mustang, a feral horse out of the wild, and train it to joust, especially if I could get it from a herd that had a high level of Spanish blood in the herd. That would be kind of an ultimate challenge for me, I think. I have worked with a rescued Mustang, but it had already been green broke, but it hadn't really been ridden very much. And I worked with him for a little bit, and he's turned into a really good horse. But he was not my horse; he belongs to a friend of mine, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So I would like to say that a feral horse would be fun. I mean, extreme feral horse would be fun to work with. Would be a nice challenge. But one that's spoiled, I think I could work with them too. But I think I'd probably lean more toward a feral horse. It's kind of a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to fix somebody else's problems.
Yes, sir. What is your least favorite barn chore?
Least favorite barn chore? That's a tough one. Because everything associated with taking care of the place and the horses and everything, I get enjoyment out of. I think lately, though, I maybe going to the feed store, which I need to do today. I'm down to my last bale of hay. I need to go do that today. So that might be the reason why we stop early, because the feed store closes at 6. It's I'm semi-retired now, so I spend a lot of time at home, and it's just, sometimes it's just kind of a pain to go get in a truck and drive down to the feed store, especially in the summertime when it's, bumping up against 100 degrees right now. So, I've got air conditioning, but it really doesn't cool down the truck until I get to the feed store.
Flip side of that, what's your most favorite barn chore? Is there any particular part of it you would like better than anything else?
Absolutely everything. I really do like going out and just going outside and the smells of horses. I love that. Your sense of smell is what's most closely related to your memory. So you could smell something and it'll bring back a lot more memories than seeing or touching or hearing something. And I have worked out of my house professionally since the early 2000s. And if I had a stressful day, I would go out and bury my nose in Lucky's mane, because, chestnuts, sorrels, they have a very specific smell that's unlike any other horse. And I'd just bury my nose in his mane and just inhale, and stress would go away. So my favorite thing, that's just going out there and being with the horses, man. But that's not really a chore, though.
Yes. There was a trainer that did a video, and to me, I mean, I obviously know the smell of a horse, but I've never really thought of their smells as individuals.
Oh, yeah.
But like, there was a trainer that did a blindfolded thing. He blindfolded himself and has his assistant bring him different horses, and he identified every one of them by their smell. And I don't know if he was
as a color or a breed or by the individual horse name.
I think all three. I think he was
Wow.
like, first, this is a gated horse. And I mean, part of that, like, you could hear it walk up. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how much entertainment there was in his video, how much of it was legit, but he nailed them. So
yeah, somebody did that with our 4 horses, or the 4 horses that are here. They're not all ours. But if somebody did it with the 4 horses we have here, I could pick them out. I could easily pick them out.
That's interesting. I may need to investigate that a little
bit. Play with that. I bet you do know it and don't realize you know it.
Yeah. So this may come back to your motto, but do you have any favorite words of wisdom or something like a motto that you live by? So I guess, why don't you tell the rest of that?
Well, but one of them is that motto, and what that motto. But I would add to it also is that you're always learning. Always learning, always listen to those that have gone before you, because they can impart a lot of wisdom to you that you don't even know you don't know. That's a big thing. But as it pertains to my motto, it actually is the moral. It's the moral of the story of an Aesop's fable, and it's called the Vixen and the Lioness. And a vixen, which is a female fox, it's springtime, and all the mamas in the forest have had babies. And the vixen is going around very, very proud of the 6 puppies or kits that she had. And so she's going around and talking to all the moms in the forest, asking, "Well, how many do you have?" And she go up to the ewe, and the ewe said, "I have 2." And the fox would say, "Well, I have 6." And then would go up to the giraffe and say, "How many did you have?" "Well, I had 1." Well, I had 6. And then she went up to the lioness and asked the lioness, how many do you have?" And she said, "1." But it's a lion. And the moral of that story is quality over quantity. And that's one of the things that I have tried to do. Although I get teased a little bit by some of my international friends. The 2012 Lists on the Lake was the biggest one, we think, in 400 or 500 years, because we had 50 competitors at it. There's no real easy way for us to figure out how true that is, but some people seem to think that. They tease me about, okay, you had the biggest one, but there was a range of quality amongst those competitors. So I get ribbed about that from time to time, but in my own pursuits, I really try to go more for the quality of an act than the quantity as best that I can. So that's my motto.
Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Well, I eat peanut butter every day for breakfast, and it happens to be smooth, but I do like crunchy peanut butter. The only reason I use the smooth stuff is because go to HEB, and they've got one that's got the peanuts in the top, and you push the button and it grinds it right there in front of you. So I use that. It's fresh off the nut.
You know what's in it in that case.
I do. But that's crunchy. I do like crunchy. I like nuts and like my ice cream and stuff like that. So,
All right. I have a feeling we're going to be in for a treat with this question. Would you tell us something unexpected about you?
Something unexpected. That one I should have thought about, because I could probably come up with some stuff, but right off the top of my head, something unexpected about me. Oh, I have met and or worked with. Keep in mind that what I do for a living is I used to be a film, television, and event producer, director. I've done a lot in the last 20 years or so, more than 20 years now, live event production. And I used to do big multi-million-dollar events. As a result of that, I have either met personally or worked with the majority of the sitting presidents from my lifetime. I sat next to LBJ at an A&M, a Texas A&M football game. I have worked with both the Bushes. I actually passed by Ronald Reagan on the highway once. Can't really say that I met him, but I have had encounters. Same thing with Bill Clinton, with both Bushes. I haven't not with Obama. I have with Trump. Let's see, who am I missing? And not Nixon. But the majority of the presidents since in my lifetime, I have either met or worked with.
Okay.
Unusual thing, I think.
That's interesting. Yes, sir. Okay, so this is similar to a past question, but that one had to do with horses. So if you could choose any new skill or superpower or ability, what would you choose? So this doesn't have to be horse related. This could be comic book character, flying, x-ray vision, teleportation, you name it, whatever. If you could snap your fingers and have unlimited power, what would you do?
I very definitely have one, and I can approach it 2 different ways. It is for more of a contemporary audience, I would say the ability to save game, load game, okay, with unlimited saves. But because I studied quite a lot of physics when I was in college, and I'm really big into, I really enjoy quantum physics. One of the things that I'm most intrigued by is in the world of quantum physics is what they call the many worlds theory. which basically means there's an infinite number of universes out there, parallel universes out there. Of course, Marvel has completely ruined that because of the way they tell stories using it. But if there are truly an infinite number of multiverses, that means that every possibility exists. And having the ability to go to each one of those other things, those other universes, you could pretty much do anything you would ever want to do. So having the ability to travel between all the multiverses safely and at will would be a truly intriguing superpower to have.
Okay. That's an interesting one. As a fellow physics nerd, I appreciate that. That's maybe the most complex one that we have gotten here so far.
But the easier way to say it is save game, load game, because it's kind of the same thing. I want to save here. If it doesn't work out, I want to go back.
Thoughts or feelings? So do you consider yourself to be more of a cerebral, analytical, rational person, or more of the intuitive, empathic, feel your way through it, go with your gut kind of person?
About 30 years ago, I took a personality test that gauged you on how you communicated with other people based on 3 factors: feeling, thinking, and deciding. And you took a test, and they put you in a 3-letter category, whether it was TDF or FTD or DFT or whatever. And it was, the first letter was the thing that you did first, and then the second letter was the thing that you did second, and the third letter is what you did last. I turned out to be a floral service, FTD. I would have an emotional response first, then I would think about it, then I would make my decision. And I'm very much still that way today, except that whatever the first letter is, they call it a big. So a big F, a big T, a big D, or a little F, T, or D. And mine is very much first. I have an emotional response, but as I've gotten older, not unexpected. As you get older, you learn how to temper that. But I generally have an emotional response first, then think about how would I deal with it, and then make a decision. Personally, I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay. So you kind of have had a split career here, but what would you have been professionally if not a horseman?
I would say, it does go back to what you just said. Yes, I have done film, television, and events, but I wanted to be a vet when I was a kid, and I had it planned out since I was 7 years old that I wanted to be a veterinarian in Southeast Texas, near my grandpa's farm that I wanted to live on, when I grew up. And then on May 25th, 1977, I changed my mind. And that was the day that Star Wars came out. And I had film production as a little bit of a hobby with the home film camera, because we didn't have video back then. And I had done that as a hobby a little bit. But when I came out of that theater, I said, I want to be a film director. And that's what I set my career path towards. And I went to North Texas State University and studied radio, TV, film. And that's where my career went. But my intention was always to direct a feature film. And that I never did. So it's very specific to your question. It's not a career in general, but a very specific part of that career was I always wanted to produce and direct a feature. And I came real close, but I didn't quite get it. The closest that I got was I worked in the computer game industry in the 90s, right when video and film was starting to find its way into computer games. And I was kind of on the bleeding edge of that. And I did two games that I produced and direct the video and film part of it. And they were about the length. They were about 2 hours worth of content, but it technically was not a feature film that showed in the theater. So if I had not done what I've done today, it would have been, I wanted to be a film director, and I missed it by that much.
Well, they have these smaller ones that show in the film festivals now, 10-minute movies and stuff like that. So you may get it done yet.
back when I was first interested, it was a rare thing. Today, I mean, we're doing it right now. It's common. You know, YouTube, everybody's a content creator. So the field is very overpopulated compared to when I was Colt's age.
So this will, without any planning on my part, tie back in with the previous question, but are you decisive or indecisive?
I'm very decisive. I will look at stuff and I will make a decision and I will stick with that decision. And it kind of applies also to stressful situations. As one of my superpowers is that in a stressful situation, like even all the way up to dangerous and or deadly, I get very focused and I do not panic. If I've gotten into a weird situation on horseback, I am able to really think things out very, very quickly and focus on what the best thing is. So far, so good. But and I get into a stressful situation, I simply do not panic. And I've recently found out a little bit of information as to why some people are that way. So I would have to say very decisive, very decisive. I make a choice and I stick with it unless I get convinced otherwise. Mm-hmm. I do listen to feedback. My wife might disagree, but
just ask her where she wants to eat tonight, and that'll prove your point, right?
I read something recently. It's like, that's 90% of marriage.
Figure out what to have for dinner.
Deciding what you're going to have for dinner tonight.
Yeah. People do not realize that is a conversation you will have every day for the rest of your life.
I don't know. What do you want? I don't know. What do you want?
Whereas when I say I'll eat anything, I don't care, I actually mean it. But
same here. Wait, tofu? I did it though last week.
Do you have a favorite piece of tack or horse-related tool?
Yeah, I would have to say my comparison. It's actually not mine. It's Tinkerbell's. Tinkerbell's my horse. A comparison is the party dress, the big, looks like a rain sheet or something like that have all the arms and the colors and all that sort of stuff on it. That is your personal heraldry that identifies who you and your horse are. It's called a comparison, and I would have to say that is probably my favorite. Close second would be the shield that we wear, the accranche, also has our arms on it, our heraldry on it. That's a close second. I've also recently acquired a 15th century reproduction jousting saddle that was made by some friends in Europe. And I really, really like that because the medieval saddle, form follows function, and that medieval saddle is built in a way that facilitates you being able to do the things that you would do in armor with a weapon in your hand. And it's very unlike any modern saddle. So that one's a really nice piece of equipment to have as well. I can do things on that medieval saddle that I could never do in a Western or an English saddle.
We'll get into that in a little more detail a little bit later.
You bet.
If you had to choose cold showers or cold food forever?
Cold food. I do not like cold water. And there's a lot of cold food that is phenomenal.
Ceviche every night for supper, right? Yeah.
Salmon. I'd eat cold salmon almost every day for the rest of my life.
Are you a cold pizza kind of guy?
Not really. I really want to warm up my pizza. But if I had to eat it, cold food for the rest of my life, pizza would definitely be in there. Cold fried chicken. That's good too. Cold chicken's good.
Are you a fisherman? Like that's one of my favorite things is leftover fried fish the next morning. Cold fried fish is just, it's almost better than hot fried fish. You know?
Yeah, well, I was born in Alexandria, Louisiana, so seafood is important to me, even though that's the north. But I grew up in Southeast Texas, and seafood is a big thing for me. Yeah, fried fish, next day fried fish, that's good. Next day fried chicken, I think, is better because I really, really loved my grandmother's fried chicken.
Okay, a couple of riding questions here. Would you say that your hands or your legs are better in terms of riding?
Me personally,
Yes, sir.
uh, at several years ago, I'd say my hands. Today, I'd say my legs because I try to ride with very little contact, very little with my hands these days because it can actually interfere with what we're trying to do. So, yeah, these days, I'd say I'm much better with my legs. I can get my horses to pretty much do, at least to some level, some degree, some are better than others, to do what I need them to do with just my seat and legs.
Okay. Left lead or right lead?
Oh, left, 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 left. Most of my horses are left. I've got one now that's a lease horse that I have that's right-handed, and it's kind of strange. It's like, oh wait, I can do some things that I don't normally. They're easy to do with him because right. But we try, at least on the tilt, I try to do a left lead canter. My horse sometimes will just pick up a right when I'm not asking for it, but no, yeah, left.
When you say that the tilt, that's going down the rail when you're approaching another rider.
That's the fence that's between you and your opponent is the fence. Interesting thing, I'll pop this in right here, is that when you're normally in an arena, your fence, when you're riding along the edge of the fence is the outside. The other side is the inside. In jousting, that tilt fence is the outside. Is the inside, not the outside. Sometimes another way to think of it is sometimes you'll see that fence, which is called the tilt, and there'll be, about 5 feet off of it, there'll be another rope. We call that the counter tilt. It's kind of an alleyway to keep the horses going straight. It's a training aid. That counter tilt is the outside because the action we're trying to deal with is to our left, which is where the fence is. So that tilt fence is actually the inside of the arena for us. And that's kind of confusing for some people when you first train them.
I've had more than a few customers that came to me wanting to work on lead changes, only to discover that their horse was more trained to lope off of the fence on one side on a certain lead.
Yep.
Like we tried to do counter canters, and then all of a sudden they realized my horse does not understand what a canter is like I thought it did. He's been trained to just lope on the one opposite of the fence right there.
Get him out in the middle of the arena and ask. And then you'll be able to find out a lot about that horse.
What is the best smell in the barn?
First and second, it's real close. Manure or the horse mane. They're real close. Of course, you're going to smell the manure before you get to the horse. So I might lean toward the manure more. And that's why I always say I can instantly tell if somebody comes to me or I'm in an environment with my horses or whatever. You can tell whether or not they're a horse person or not by the way they react to the smell of horse manure. Because I firmly believe that horse people are born, not made. Because you can go out there and, if they're around horses and they don't like the smell of horse manure, you're always going to be at a deficit, man. Always. Even if somebody else is cleaning it up, you got to be able to, you're born liking that smell. Plus, it means healthy.
Okay, back to food. I have a lot of food questions in my deal with
that question. How common is manure to that? Have you, when you're doing this?
There have only been a few people that have said that. Really? Probably hay would be the most common answer. Then maybe the smell of the horse or the smell of leather probably after that.
All of those, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But manure is what you're going to smell first. That means I'm around my horses. So
yes, sir.
New boots.
New boots smell.
Yeah. Our boots. My boots have a specific smell. Yep.
Old boot smells not so good though.
Yesterday, I had something happen to me yesterday. My farm out in East Texas, the one that I was telling you about before that belonged to my grandpa. I remember when we built the barn out there, it was made out of creosote. And whenever I go out to the farm and I smell that barn, I'm like, oh man, I'm in heaven now, you know. Mm-hmm. And yesterday I was working with some old railroad ties and cutting them up to use them to level where I was putting my water troughs. And I cut into one of those old railroad ties. And I'm like, oh man, just visions of the farm came flooding back from when I was a kid. And I get out there every once in a while. I used to go out there all the time, but since the pandemic, I haven't gone out there as much. But yeah, smelling those creosote posts, that might be up there too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Sweet, salty, or spicy?
Well, kind of all of the above, because my wife cooks that way. And she is a big master at fat, salt, sweet. I can't remember. It's a book. It's a book mm-hmm. that is that chefs use, and so I would have to say, really, quite. She has taught me how to appreciate all three to some degree in a dish. So, but I would say probably leaning toward salt, because I put a lot of salt on my food. And but I taste it beforehand. But she always undersalts things, so I put salt on stuff. I think salt probably is pretty high up there.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one with us too. I think it's because we work outside and sweat a lot, and so you gotta.
If you need it, if it tastes good, your body needs it.
Yeah,
you know, like chocolate chip cookies.
Oh. This is one of my favorite questions, because after you're about 7 or 8, no one ever asks you this anymore. So, do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
I'm going to be way, way, way too common on this. It's going to be a T-Rex.
Okay.
That's probably the most common you're going to get.
So see, mine is a Triceratops.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking, could you joust on that thing? I mean, he's a little tank. Like whatever you square him up against is gonna.
Right. So there's this one guy in the jousting community who was very full of himself, and at one point, one of us, I won't admit that it was me. One of us drew something up in Photoshop of him on a Triceratops holding a telephone pole as a lance. That's the kind of ego he had.
Uh-huh. Our final question: have you ever had a UFO encounter?
Yes. In fact, I got video of it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I've actually had 2, maybe 3. One of them was what looked to me like was a series off the backside of our property facing toward Georgetown, Texas. There is an airport out there, and it was about 9 o'clock at night. And it looked like a series of flares. They were orange, and it looked like 3 flares had been dropped, and they were falling. But as they fell, the one that was at the lowest would disappear, and then it would appear as the highest. And that went on for about 30 minutes. And I got video of it, and I assumed that there was some sort of flare. One of my students who had been stationed at Fort Hood, which is just north of us, Fort Caballos now is what it's called now. He was stationed there. He was an Apache pilot. I was telling him about it and showed him. Actually, I haven't shown him the video. I was asking him about it. I said, "These are flares, right?" He goes, "No, those are not flares. They would not. You don't drop flares over civilian airspace." And I was like, he said, "Let me see what I can find out." He came back here. I have no idea what that stuff is. So there's that. The other prominent one was I was visiting a friend of mine in Oregon who lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and it was a moonless night, and the sky was gorgeous. You could see all the stars. You could see the Milky Way. It was absolutely beautiful. And we were watching satellites flying by, and they were just, 20 or 30 going by all the time. You'd see them all over the place. And this is probably about an hour or two after sunset. And I saw two of them and I pointed out to my friends, two of them that were going along parallel to one another. And then as soon as everybody was looking at it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're going to cross paths. And as soon as I said that, one of them sped up, went around the other, and zoomed off to the horizon. And we were all like, did you see that? And then the third one I'm not too sure about, so I'm not going to mention it. But those were identified.
Yes, sir.
Flying, and they were objects. So
pretty cool. Plays into your multi-universe theory too. There.
Away.
Well, let me tabulate your score here. Got you at 5,870 points, and Steve, you'll be thrilled to know that makes you our highest score of all time on this game.
But I'm not the one.
So that entitles you to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment. Your choice.
Genuine compliment.
Well, I kind of have to come at this one as a dad. So I was really thrilled when
anything less.
when Colt came to me and he had this idea of, I found this guy and I want to approach him and put him on the podcast. Can I do it? I said, yes, but you're going to do it, not me. And so you got a cold email from a kid identifying himself as this 12-year-old from the ether. And I can just imagine the number of people that would have not responded to that and so forth. And you did, and you have been very gracious in the correspondence with him and everything. And I can't tell you as a dad how much I appreciate the way you've handled that and given him this opportunity and kind of this win. It's a feather in his cap, So I really appreciate that.
And kudos back to you, Colt, because that meant so much to me too. Because jousting, when people come to me about jousting, there's a bar. It's lower than most people think, but there's still a bar to entry. And it's not the horse, it's not the armor. It's just like you run into in anything else in life, is things aren't easy. And if you make an attempt, they get easier. And then next time you can jump over that bar that's higher, and it's higher, that's higher, that's higher. It keeps going up. So the fact that somebody your age, anybody, but I'm especially, you're the youngest. One of my students that I've got right now came in when he was 16. So you've beat that record now at 12 years old, seeking me out. When I saw that, and you said in there how old you were, I was like, that meant so much to me that you took the initiative to do that. So I'm going to put that compliment back on you, that you're a fine young man, and I appreciate you reaching out to me to do this. Now, I'll point out that so far your dad's been doing most of the talking. So I hope he turns it over to you sometime soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That means a lot.
So I do have one question, and then it'll predominantly be him. And that's kind of our lead question here is always, would you just give us kind of the 30,000 foot view? I did the introduction, and you've obviously talked about jousting, but would you kind of tell us what putting on jousting events and all of that, just sort of the 30,000 foot view of what that looks like?
Sure. So I'll start back a little bit. The first memory I ever had of being on a horse, I was 3 years old, and my cousin grabbing a hold of me and crying and screaming and kicking, and he slid off, and we both fell off, and I landed on my head. That probably explains everything for the rest of my life. But I've been involved with horses since I was 3 years old. We had horses until I was about 11, 12 years old. Then, I got interested in other things, went off to school. I did, whenever I found myself in a situation where it was easy for me to like hop on a horse, I would do that. But it wasn't until 2002, my wife decided she wanted to get into riding, and she wanted that to be her hobby. My hobby was falconry. And she's like, I want to, and we bought this place in 97 with the intention of putting horses on it at some point, in a little over 10 acres. And so but she said, this is mine. This is my hobby. So she went and took some lessons from a good friend of ours that's in the same medieval organization that we're in, and who also after a couple of years ended up being instrumental, and is still very instrumental. Her and her husband instrumental in getting jousting going in North America, along with several of us. And my wife started riding with her. She decided it was time to get our own horse. We bought. I had invested in Tractor Supply stock, and after a year, it more than doubled. So we bought our first horse with the proceeds from Tractor Supply stock. And she started riding Lucky, and after a couple of months decided that she was like, I don't know, we're not connected. And I said, well, can I give him a shot? And I started riding with him, and we bonded immediately. And bonded, but not necessarily in a positive way until we figured each other out. And it all started with that. And then in the medieval organization, we're doing horse stuff, and we're all sitting around one day, and we were doing gymkhana stuff. We were doing, just nothing that was really medieval. They were just modern games on horseback in a medieval setting. And one day, several of us were sitting around going, why aren't we jousting? And nobody had a good answer. We knew what the answer was, is that the insurance for the organization that we were part of, specifically called out in the rules, you can't joust. There was no racing, no vaulting, and no jousting. So we're like, wonder why that's the case. Well, one of the folks that was involved in these early days, still involved, is an attorney. So he went and did some research and found out, and he had been an officer in this organization. He went out and did some research, and it's like, well, it's because the underwriter for the insurance said that. So he went off and found another insurance company that would allow us to do jousting. And I'm like, sure, no problem. And the annual premium was $10,000 less than the previous insurance company. So we took that to the board of directors, and they're like, okay. So we put together something that we referred to as safe and sound jousting. What we wanted to do is what the rest of the world was doing, which was jousting with wooden lances. But we didn't think that the organization, it's called the Society for Creative Anachronism, by the way. It's the largest reenactment group in the world. And you'll hear me refer to them as the SCA. So the SCA, we didn't think that they would approve us using wooden lances. So we came up with something that we took cardboard tubes that were used for fabric, roll up a bolt of fabric, and we put it on the end of a wooden stick that was the handle. And on the other end, we took a 2-foot long, 2-inch diameter piece of styrofoam and stuffed that down a couple of inches into that cardboard tube. And we would ride along and hit one another. So we, the way that we do experiments in the SCA is we do it in our backyard first. We get as much data as we can, and then we present it to the organization, say we want to do an experiment. Then it's an experiment in a testing phase for a few years, and then becomes mainstream, makes part of the whole organization. So we started doing this with cardboard tubes and foam lances. We call them foam lances, foam tips. And we did that for a while, got our foot in the door. A few years later, it was like, all right, this is kind of a common thing now, or it's more seen, it's seen now. We're doing jousting in the SCA. All right, now we're going to do a demo with wooden lances, which is what the rest of the world was doing. And we did that. And we did some demos, and then it was an experiment. And so a bunch of us in the SCA all over the country started jousting with wooden lances. As it is currently today, I am the officer that's in charge of all of that jousting in the society, in the SCA. And we're keeping it going. We've got, I think, 40 or 50 something jousters all across mainly North America. There are some in Australia. But then outside the SCA, because of this experience we had in the SCA, I wanted to get invitations to stuff from overseas. And the only way you're going to do that is if people know who you are. Well, nobody knew who I was. So it's kind of a catch-22. They don't know who you are unless you've been in a tournament. You can't get in a tournament unless they know who you are. Well, my background in event production, I'm like, well, then I'm going to host a jousting tournament here. And it became Lists on the Lake. And so they all came to me. I had these people from all over the world, 50 people from all over North America and France and Germany and Australia, several places. And they got to know me, and then they started getting invitations to go overseas. So, and then it just grew from there. And then, I take people along with me, either as ground crew or as additional jousters. There might be, hey, Steve, can you put together an American team and come over here? And I'm like, sure. So trying to give other people the opportunity as well, people that are my students and stuff like that, to be able to have the opportunity to experience this as well, because it's all about who you know. So you asked the question as, what does it take to put on a jousting tournament? Basically, what I do is the easiest thing. I have people come to me all the time going, hey, I think we should do a joust. And I'm like, all right. So I ask them questions. The easiest thing to do is to find a venue. The hardest thing to do is to put butts in seats, the marketing side of it. In the United States or in North America, but mainly the United States, when you think of jousting, you think of a Renaissance festival. And that's, a several week commitment. And it's a show. Sometimes it's choreographed, sometimes it's not, but it's a show. And it's a stunt show. And the people that do that are excellent at what they do. And I would still call that jousting. But what we wanted to do was an actual competition. And so we approached it more from the standpoint of a horse show. We don't care if there's an audience. It's nice if there's an audience. But our primary thing is we want to joust with our friends. And we want to take score. As it turns out, score is really not that important. And I'll probably get into this a little bit more later on, but it's about going out there and doing fun things with our friends. And so what we'll do is I have enough locations that we can do that at. The easiest one is right behind me, which is our arena. I've got an arena and we've hosted tournaments there. We host practice there all the time. Of course, I teach there as well. But, we decide on a place, a date, and then we start telling people, hey, we're doing this thing at this time and date. Come on out. If I am doing this with a client who has money, then what I do is I pay these people to come be part of this experience. One of the things that we absolutely do not do is put up prize money. That's real common, like in the rodeo type set. Everybody puts money into a hat, and then the person at the end of the day with the most points wins that hat. We absolutely do not do that, and it's based on the chivalry side of things. Because when you are competing head to head with someone, physically head to head with someone, we have seen too many situations where money was a factor and things got nasty, where people were cheating and they would be doing stuff like avoiding trying to be hit, as a simple example. And that's the thing. The number one thing that you do, the number one thing you do is make sure everybody's safe, including the horses. But you need to present an excellent target for your opponent. You don't try and avoid the hit in any way, shape, or form. You don't try and parry it. You take the hit first and foremost. And if you try to avoid that hit, either accidentally or on purpose, you're penalized for that. So all the way up to being ejected out of the tournament, DQ'd out of the tournament because you're trying to, win points by, trying to roll your shoulder or whatever, so they don't break their lance. So we're really out there helping each other to do the best that we can, have the best pass that we can. The points are really more for the audience, whether you score 1, 2, or 3 points in a pass, that's so that the audience can tell who's ahead. We don't care that much. We know whether or not we've had a good pass, and it might be we missed, but our horse is in the right position. We were in the right position. Everything went really well, but I hit them and the tip slipped off, but the lance slipped off and didn't break. I still did a really good pass. My opponent did a really good pass. We remember those things. We kind of don't really remember who won per se. Now, that being said, there are people that are more competitive than others. And they're like very proud of the accolades that they have. I've got trophies. I'm proud of those trophies. But I will say that what's more important to me is the experience that I had to be able to go to Denmark or to joust for Queen Elizabeth or to, go work with the folks down in Australia. I have had jousting invitations, but to go down to Australia, but I've had two and something else came up and I couldn't go. So I'm still going to go down to Australia and compete and not be a color commentator for Fox Sports. But that's fun too. So time, place, people, if I have money, we'll pay everybody. We'll pay everybody a travel fee to come down and do this thing. Of course, we've got the expenses of the lances. The biggest expense when you have people come down like that is food. Feeding everybody is big. Insurance is big, and it goes up every time. But food is our biggest expense because you're trying to decently feed everybody over like a 3-day weekend. That gets really expensive. And we typically have 14 people that are working on the ground at least. We can go smaller than that, but a paid joust, if a client comes to me and wants us to do something and they pay me to do this, we're going to have 14 people on the ground helping out. And we might have a dozen, 16 competitors. We can do it as little as 6 or 4 even, but those are much smaller type events. If I'm going to do a full-on tournament, we want to have something that is, in my opinion, something that's divisible, a number of people that's divisible by 3. So 9, 12, 15, 18. 18? Yeah, 18. So that's kind of the sweet spot. And we'll do, as far as the tournament goes, my format that I like to do for the big 3-day tournaments is on the first day we divide everybody up into 3 groups. And let's say there's 15 people, a total of 15. We divide them up into 3 groups and we do a round robin of all of these people. We have 5 people in group 1, 5 people in group 2, 5 people in group 3. And we go out there and all 5 of those people in the first session joust one another. Everybody in the second session joust one another. Everybody in the third session joust one another. And then we take the top 10. And on Saturday, so the 15 all joust, everybody jousts on Friday. On Saturday, we have 10 people. The top 10 people progress on based on score. And then we'll also have either a skillet arms type tournament where we'll be tilting at rings or chopping cabbages or, spearing a target, that sort of stuff. We'll do that. And then on Sunday, we'll have the top 5 compete in the finale. And then we also do the melee, which is everybody gets out in the armor. All 15 people get out there and we beat each other to submission with these wooden clubs. And that, if you got 15 people out there, 12, 15, 18 people out there doing that, it's intense. They generally don't last more than about 3 or 4 minutes. It is exhausting. It is horribly exhausting, but it's what the audience seems to like the best. And then at the end of the day, generally at 3 o'clock on the last day, whoever's got the most points wins. They get a trophy. It's love and adoration of everybody, and then we go home. Pack up. That's kind of a typical type of event. And of course, there's big ones, there's small ones. In 2012, we did it. We had 50 people. That was rough. That was a lot of work. And there weren't very many butts in the seats, so I lost a lot of money on that one. But the smaller ones that we do, everybody's good about chipping in and helping each other out, whether it's helping with the horses, helping armor up, people bringing food and doing a potluck, hanging out at night and doing fun stuff and clinics and stuff like that. So that's basically what a tournament is. But I also do clinics. I go places to teach clinics. People come to me and I teach clinics. One of the things that I started a few years ago is because of my situation, nobody knew who I was, but I wanted to joust. But there's people in the States who have excellent armor. They are excellent people to be around, and they're skilled. But nobody in the international community knows who they are. So what I've done a few times is I will contact some of my friends overseas and say, hey, let's put together, I call it a jousting junket. How one friend of mine who unfortunately passed away on New Year's Day, he has this chateau in Normandy, and it's a bed and breakfast. It's a 17th century castle. And I said, hey, put us up for a week, give us horses, feed us, and let's do a tournament on one of the weekends. And we'll go spend 3 or 4 days in Paris. We'll go to the museums. We'll do all that extra stuff. And then we'll do a tournament at your house, because he does tournaments at his house. And he goes, absolutely. So we figured out how much that was going to be. And we invited a bunch of people that we thought would be good at doing this sort of thing. Put the call out to a lot of folks. And we put together this trip, went to France for a week, and had a tournament in Normandy. Then last year, in May of last year, I did the same thing in Germany. A friend of ours who's in central Germany, who has a castle in his backyard. I think it's a 12th century castle ruins in his backyard. And we did the same thing with him. The difference with him was he travels around the world teaching this stuff. So we did a week worth of clinics with his Spanish stallions, I think all of them. Yeah, all of them were Spanish stallions. We trained with him for a week, and then we had a tournament on the weekend, and a group of people came out there. And so I'm working on some of those deals to be able to do that in other places around the world. And, to give people an opportunity, because at that point, then they're like, these other event organizers around the world will see some of the other folks that are here in the United States that I've taken over there, and they'll start getting invitations, and just, it helps grow the community bigger and bigger and bigger. So.
Very cool. Colt, you have a few questions for him now?
Yeah. Let's see. So first and foremost, for a lot of people, I'm sure listening, do not know what jousting is mainly like. So what sport would you compare the difficulty of jousting with?
That's a really good question. I'll start off from just an equestrian standpoint. It is a combination of, we touched on this earlier, it's a combination of knowing how to be a horseman, knowing how to maneuver your horse, and doing it in a safe and friendly fashion. And I say friendly, the relationship with your horse, because if you're hitting your friend, they might not think that's friendly. But it's a combination of that, kind of below the waist and above the waist, if you will. Below the waist, being in balance and in tune with your horse so that you can do what needs to be done. And then from the, above the waist, it's handling a weapon of some sort, whether it's a lance or a sword or a spear or a javelin or whatever it is that you're going to be using. So it's a dual discipline. Maybe something like hockey, because you got to know how to skate, and you got to know how to use a hockey stick. There's a great analogy that we use, and people come to us like, I get this all the time. I want to learn how to joust. I'm like, all right, my first question is, how often do you ride? Oh, I've never ridden before. Well, that's like saying, well, I'd be good, but let me back up. But I'm a big guy. I was a linebacker in college. I'm a tough guy. And I'm like, well, that's like saying you'd be good at hockey because you know how to fight, but you don't know how to skate. You got to know how to skate first, So that's an analogy that we frequently use. So, you got to know how to ride. You have to be, what I ask people to be when they come to me is that be in balance at a walk, trot, canter. English terms I understand. As a walk, trot, canter. Be able to round and bend your horse at all gaits, and do transitions that, and it's kind of a low bar, but as horse people, we know it can take a little bit to get there. But if you got a made horse, it's going to be a lot easier than if you don't have a made horse. You can be the best jouster in the world, but if you don't have a good horse, you're not going to be able to do very well at this. Same thing. A good horse will take you a long way and will teach a beginner a lot. That's, I've got very much a jousting schoolmaster, my Frisian Percheron mare, Tinkerbell. Anybody can ride her, and I can teach anybody how to joust. So far, so good on her. But comparing it to another sport is difficult because the actual sport aspect of it is very different from all other sports. There is no defense. You don't try and stop from being hit. You want to present the best target you possibly can to give your opponent the best chance at scoring, and they're going to do the same thing. And then it becomes a skill-based. Coming from a fencing background, it's a lot like fencing, except instead of having a sword that's 3 feet long, it's 11 and a half, 12 feet long. I was surprised the very first time I did this. We're in somebody's backyard. None of us had done this before, but we started experimenting with it. And we'd start off slow, and we'd add this piece and add that piece, and we'd add a piece of armor, add a lance, hit a target. And eventually we ended up in full armor, passing each other and hitting. And I discovered that I was hitting the target pretty regularly. I was fairly green at riding because I hadn't done it since I was a kid. I'd never ridden in armor before. I'd never held a lance before, but I was good at hitting the target. And on the drive home, I was asking my wife, I don't get that. She goes, 30 years of fencing. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Knowing the relationship of how to hit, with a thing in my hand. Another thing I like to say is this is going to catch you off guard. You may or may not know do you know what trigonometry is?
Somewhat, yes, sir.
It's math. It's a form of math that deals with triangulation, with triangles. It's the math of triangles in essence. You may be bad at math, but if you're on a horse and you're riding and you're going to go hit your opponent, your brain knows how to do that triangulation instantly. Now, some people are great at it. Some people are not so great at it. But that speed and seeing the approaching target and the angles that you need to get, your brain knows how to do trigonometry. So you may have been bad at, well, you're not old enough yet, but when you get into trigonometry in high school, your brain already knows how to do it. I guarantee you. Same thing as have you been roping?
Very little. Not on a horse, though.
Same thing with roping. It's about angles and speed and how you approach your target. So your brain already knows how to do it. And now you're just going to learn to put it out on paper. So there's math involved that you're not aware of. But there's the horsemanship aspect of it. There's the targeting aspect of it. And like I said, it's very unique in that all the other sports, you make it easy for your opponent to score. And there's really no other sport that I can think of that's the case.
Well, I like my background's in cutting, and so in cutting you're showing, but then you've got 4 other, usually your trainers you're showing against are in there. You have 2 behind you holding the herd, and then 2 in front called turnback help. So you kind of are dependent on the cooperation of everybody, and I have seen that play out well, and I have seen people want to fight afterwards as well. So yes. So I have a question here. Kind of off of that, what is how physical is this? Is this something that you kind of need to be a beast of a man to do, or can the average guy take the hit?
Not only do you need to be a beast of a man, you don't have to be a beast of a woman. The hardest I have ever been hit has been by women.
Okay.
And I've jousted well over 100 people in my career all around the world, and the women hit the hardest. Okay. So surprisingly, no, you do not have to be a beast of a guy. I'm 5'8" and I weigh 157 pounds. There are guys that are bigger than me. There are women that are smaller than me. One of the women that I admire the most in this sport is about 5'3". And she's out of France. Her name's Marie. I think she's 5'3", 4. She's not very big. But she is a master horse person. And that is the key to this. 90% of jousting is knowing how to ride. About 5% of it is learning how to ride in armor, because it does mess with your balance. You have to figure out where your center of balance is. And as you know, everything you do has to do with how you move your center of balance on the back of a horse. And 5% is hitting the other person. And that part, hitting the other person, is by far the easiest part of this. And when you get hit, most of the time we don't even notice it, because our armor is not a costume. It's based on historical reproductions, or it is a historical reproduction of authentic armor. It's got the same weight, the same structure, the same shapes, everything. We try and get as historically accurate as we can, because it worked back then. It works now. And so the armor does its job. The shield that we have, the accoutrements that we have, it does its job. Now, occasionally, you might get hit in the head. You're going to notice that. But there's a couple of times, I got a picture on my phone that somebody took of the last tournament that I was in, and a friend of mine hit me, and the lance kind of bent and went up and hit me in the head and knocked me back. Well, in the picture, I'm like maybe at 45 degrees backwards in my saddle, and my head's thrown back. I did not know I'd gotten hit that hard. But most of the time you don't know you've been hit, because the system does its job. We've got a safety record in competitive jousting that's probably better than a high school football team. You rarely see really any serious injuries. And if you do see an injury, it's probably going to have something to do with working on the ground around the horses, getting stepped on or something like that. If you get hit and come off, which is kind of let me add this in, we'll talk about it more. The point of jousting has has historically not been about knocking your opponent off the horse. That was a side effect. That was not the goal. The goal was to go out and show your prowess, your skill, your money, your wealth, your power, based on the armor that you were wearing. You were a superhero of the time, and that's the best way to equate it. People would look at you, and you were, undefeatable. You were invincible, and you showed that off. You showed off your wealth and your power. It wasn't about the person at the end of the day with the most points. So most of the people that jousted historically and that joust today are about average size, which is me, 150 something pounds and 5'8". And we've got some petite women that are excellent jousters at this. Some of the best in the world are women. And you don't see a whole lot of really big, beefy guys doing competitive jousting, because it just, if you can, I told somebody once who was kind of new, who was doing a type of jousting that was popular in the past. It was a system that was engineered to knock you out of the saddle. And this guy who was kind of new, he was a former college football player. And he said, "Hey, when are you going to come out and joust with us on this field?" And I said, "Tell you what, I'll go out and joust with you tomorrow, in your style, and I will beat you, and I will not carry a lance." And he laughed at me. He said, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And I said, "You're new at this, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "You're not." He said, "Yeah." And he knew that he had some problems with maintaining his balance. He had fallen off the horse that day. Not because he got hit. He was just sitting on the side of the field, and the horse cocked its hip. He lost his balance. He slid off. But he was a big football player guy, but he didn't know how to ride. And I said, "I'll go out there. I'll sit in my saddle with no lance. You'll hit me. And the power that you hit me with is going to go into you more than me. You're going to come off your horse. I'm probably not, because I've got a better seat than you do." So it's not about being big. It's not about being powerful. It's not about punching, because you don't punch. You just hold on to it. And by the way, you hold on to it with the lance with your underarm, not with your hand. You just kind of brace you hold it and guide it with your hand, but you are gripping it under your arm. And more historical styles of jousting, the lance rest or the arret, that's there to keep the lance from bouncing back as well, pushing back as well. But I'll go into that later. That's a very specific type of jousting that is the most historically accurate. But the group of people that we generally do, we don't use the arrets, but we're working to expand on that. But and he laughed at me, but he agreed with me. He said, "Yeah, you're probably right." And I said, because it is more about riding. It's not about being a big, strong guy. And it is. It frequently gets tossed around. Force equals mass times acceleration. So the big guys on the big horses have more mass. But if you're not connected to that horse, you don't get the mass from your horse. So if you're not connected to the horse and you're riding a 1,200 pound or a 2,000 pound Belgian or whatever, or a 1,100 pound quarter horse, you don't get advantage of that horse to break your land unless you're connected to your horse. And but the thing is about that equation, which, Colt, this might be a little bit over your head at this point, but force equals mass times acceleration. Well, mass is a fixed element. Acceleration is squared. So if I'm on my quarter horse and we're speeding up into that hit, and somebody else is coming at me who weighs 260 pounds and they're on a 2,000 pound Belgian, I am going to be putting more force into that equation than they will be because I'm accelerating into the shot. And so I'll actually put more power into that shot. They're going to feel it more than I will. Yeah, the short answer is nope, you don't have to be. Anybody can do this. Men, women compete against each other. And it has more to do with your skill as a horse person and how well your horse is trained. That's the key element. Or those are the key elements.
Well, Steve, I think it's about time in here where we need to pay the bills and tip our hat to the sponsor of this episode. So I hope you appreciate this one. I think we found a good one for you.
I know a little bit about your sponsors, so I'm anxious to see who the sponsor is today. The Colt's laughing. I'm afraid of what I've gotten in store.
He had a hand in this one.
Well, good
as
for
well.
you.
So we are sponsored today by Lancelot's Lances. There is nothing more frustrating than a lance that doesn't lance for very long. Are you tired of unhorsing your enemy but breaking a lance in the process? Our new titanium lances are lightweight and virtually unbreakable. These babies will ensure that you'll be drinking your nightly mead from the skull of your enemies. If you're in this for sport and not trying to vanquish thine enemies, we've got titanium lances with replaceable tips. Only the last 3 fleet are wood and can be replaced easily and quickly by thy squire. The tips are made from sustainable bamboo with just a touch of English yew, so no crusades are needed. For those of you in the city daydreaming of jousting for real, we've got a new umbrella design in the works that we think you're really going to like. We've also got a new men's grooming line where the scents are so powerful they can lure away a queen. Just ask Guinevere. While you're shopping at our newest location, Camelot's Fuel, Brisket, Weaponry, Turkey Legs, and more, don't forget to pick up a jar of our nightly chafe butter. It'll help ease all those places where the knight may need some protection from his armor. If you're in the market for other types of medieval weaponry, don't forget to check out our sister company, Strange Women Lying in Ponds Distributing Swords, located inside the Camelot Fuel, Brisket, Weaponry, Turkey Legs, and more universe. If you're in the market for some shrubbery, our newest location also includes the Knights of Nursery, where it's a hedge or a bog that needs decoration. We've got ones that look nice and are not too expensive. So I really want to thank you for this because I got to watch a Mighty Python and the Holy Grail with my son so that he would understand all of that. So if there's any Mighty Python fans out there, a whole lot of that made sense to you. Okay. We've paid the bills. You got some more questions for him?
So since a majority of the horse world is female. Is that the same in the jousting community, or is there more males than females in the sport?
I'd say it's probably about 3/4 guys, 1/4 women. Maybe a little bit less than that. Not sure. Um, the I think it's just because the whole concept of the knight in shining armor thing kind of leans more toward guys, but I'm not sure. There are certainly plenty of women that joust. I love jousting women. In fact, one of my favorite compliments that I give is that when I go up against somebody, all these people are friends of mine, right? And I will do this over and over and over. Some of the tournaments that we do, there's one tournament that we do. The SCA holds a big war. That's the group in Florida and the group in Texas get together every year about an hour and a half north of New Orleans and just outside of Lumberton, Mississippi. And we have what's called Gulf Wars. And people come from all over the place. Usually about 4,000 people come to this war. And there's a bunch of activities that go on the whole week. But I host clinics and jousting tournaments there as well. And we have people coming. It's the biggest equestrian event in the SCA. We usually have, 50, 60 or more horses sometimes. We had more. I think we had over 70 at one point. And we have all sorts of activities that we do. And one of the things that I started doing at that event is because so many of the equestrians are women, but they're smaller subset do jousting at that event. And one of the things that I do is I will yell across the field to my female friends who are jousting and say, "You joust like a girl." And the best response I ever got was, "Thank you. Try and keep up." And one of them, who was actually Melissa, and she's actually the officer who's in charge of all competitive sports in the SCA worldwide. Her name's Melissa. Lives in Colorado. She bought me a shirt. She gave it to me, and I am frequently seen wearing it. It's a blue shirt, and it has a horse motif on it that's pink, and it says, "Yes, I know I ride like a girl. Try and keep up." And I wear that shirt because that is a compliment to me. Somebody tells me I joust like a girl, that's good. Or I ride like a girl, that's a good compliment.
Would you tell us a little bit about the scoring? So like you are to present a good target. You can get deductions if you do something to, like say drop shoulder or whatever, but are you aiming to break the lance? Like what is full marks?
The point of these competitions, these horse shows, is to break the lance. Just like in historical context, we go out there and we want to look good and we want to have a good presentation. We have a nice comparison, like I talked about before. We might have some armor on our horse. We might have a plume in our helmet. They might have a plume on their head. We might have attendants, heralds that announce us in, ground crew that carry our shields, and squires that help us. We want to, put up that medieval image for anybody that's there, even if it's just our friends, even if there's no audience. We like to do that sort of stuff. I mean, we're all in it, kind of started from a historical reenactment standpoint, and we like having all that sort of stuff. But once we get on the tilt and we start jousting against one another, it is about scoring points, for, like I said, mostly for the audience. Different places do it different. I told you a little bit earlier about how we do it. We try and do a round robin, because if you're traveling across the country or even across the world to come to one of our tournaments, we want you to be able to joust a bunch. So as opposed to, if you're doing a round robin of 5 people, that's 4 opponents you get to joust with in the first day. And there's a good chance you might joust 4 in the second day. And then, if you're in the finals, that's another 4. So you get a lot of jousting with our tournaments, as opposed to like a single elim or a double elim tournament where if you go, and we typically do 3 passes with one another, and some people do, some tournament organizers, you do 3 passes, and whoever wins that match, whoever has the most points wins. One's eliminated, the other one goes on. Well, that means some people are only going to joust once, and it takes a lot to haul across the country, and you're going to be like, hey, I want to do more jousting. That's why we do round robins. So, and we structure it so that everybody does the same number of passes so that it's easier to score. If we end up, this group might have 5 passes, this group might have 4, group might have 6, then we'll end up doing an average so we can, better see, be more equitable in the scoring. But once we start, we're at each end of the tilt, which is the fence in between, and that is really to keep the horses from running into each other. It's armor. It's about 5.5 feet tall. It protects the horse because it's really difficult to get your lance too low, and a low lance is a big cardinal sin. The biggest cardinal sin is you do not hit a horse. If you hit a horse, the system is frangible, but the horse remembers this. And it is the worst thing you can do in jousting is hit a horse, even if nothing bad happens. The tips that we use in competitive jousting are made to break blunt. So the odds of a horse actually getting speared is very, very, very low. I have been doing this for over 20 years, and I've never seen it happen with the types of lances that we use because they are engineered. And I'm slipping off the topic just a little bit here, off your question just a little bit here, but the tips that we use are frangible, are either balsa or what we use these days more is fur. The reason we use balsa is not because it's light and because you don't feel it. That's not why we do it. Balsa has a very, very short grain. So when it breaks blunt. If you did that with a piece of southern yellow pine, it's going to break with sharp points, and that's dangerous. So what we do when we were doing it with balsa, I actually really like to use the medium to heavyweight balsa, which hits harder because, let me rephrase that. It takes more to break it. When you have these tips are 3 feet long. If you have a really soft piece of balsa and you hit somebody, you get no tactile feedback. You're not sure if you hit them or not. And then you hit with the lance that does not break. So you are getting hit with a solid lance at that point. The hardest I've ever been hit has been with a lance that had a really lightweight piece of balsa in it. You get the crap knocked out of you in those sort of situations. These days, because the price of balsa is so expensive, what we did is we go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and get their select fir. It's not pine. I wish I could use pine because I got 60 acres full of pine in East Texas, but southern yellow pine is too strong. It won't break. It's really hard to break. And when it does break, it breaks with a point. So what we use is fir. And then I've set up a jig that I learned from a friend of mine in Finland that spiral cuts it. And it puts it's about 3/8 of an inch groove all the way down the end. And when that breaks, it breaks blunt. So you don't, nobody gets hurt. All right. So you're standing at each end of the tilt. You salute to one another to let each other know that you're ready. Once both of you have saluted, you take off to each other. You slowly lower your lance. You don't start with it down because our lances weigh about 3.5 pounds when you're just weighing them and you're holding them straight up. It's 3.5 pounds. Not that big of a deal. But when they're down and they're 12 feet long, 11.5, 12 feet long, the weight in your hand is about 50 pounds. So when you've got that 50 pounds in your hand and you're cantering down the tilt, every inch that you move down here is going to be a foot down at the other end. And, we do compensate based on how we move. If you're in really good balance at the canter, you can do that. But it takes a lot to hold a lance on target. Say your tilt is, 120 feet long and you're meeting in the middle. It takes a lot to hold that lance level for 60 feet. So what we do is we hold it straight up and we slowly lower it. And the term for that is called a levee. We slowly lower it until right about the point where the lance would be about to pass the horse's head. And that's when you cross over the tilt and you hit the other person's shield. And just like every other sport, every sport's got follow through. We have follow through in jousting. You break on the shield, you continue on for a little bit, then you move it over. You look at the tip to see if it broke or not, then you raise it back up. So the only real strength you need is to raise it back up after the hit. That's where the most strength comes from. Lowering it, you're just lowering it slowly, and you want to end with it parallel to the ground, ideally, and hitting your target, which is in the middle of the shield. So that being said, from the waist up is a target. Anything below the waist is not a target because you run the risk of hitting the horse. You hit a horse, you're not only kicked out of that tournament, you may never be invited to another tournament anywhere again. That's the big no-no. We are very sensitive about hitting too low, not only for the horse, but also for the rider, because there are ways to protect your crotch, your groin, but sometimes that lance can slip in. And I've been hitting the crotch really badly. A good friend of mine down in Australia got hit in the crotch, and I won't go into too much detail, but he had to have something reattached. And we don't want that to happen. So hitting low is a big no-no. So the target is from the waist up, and in some tournaments, the head is a target. Some tournaments, the head is off target, but you need to be armored there in case something happens. The way we do it, the head is not a target because we don't want people specifically aiming at the head, because most of us are riding in a helmet that is not made to be hit. All right, let me rephrase that. It can be hit. It's okay if it's hit, but it's not. You need to have if your head is a target, you need to have a helmet that is bolted or attached to your breastplate so that you don't get a whiplash. That's a safety factor. If you have that kind of a helmet, it's more likely that you can score hitting somebody in the head. But most of us have what we call a field helmet, which is what was used in a war, not necessarily on the tournament field. Let me interject that in real quick. Jousting has always been a tournament activity. It is not something that was used. You weren't trying to kill your opponent. Sometimes that happened. Sometimes there were judicial duels, but it was primarily a tournament sport, just like football or baseball or basketball. The goal was not to hurt your opponent. So when we get down to scoring, everybody does a little bit different, but primarily the way we do it is if you hit between the waist and the neck, but not the shield. I'm sorry. We just changed the rules a little bit. So if you hit between the neck and the waist and do not break your lance, that's 1 point. And you'll see the person, we have judges at each end watching the person going away, and they'll raise up one hand. And that lets the main scoring judge know what they saw. So if you get hit in this area, your opponent scores 1 point. If you get hit in this area and it breaks, but not on the shield, it's 2 points. So if the shield's here and you get hit anywhere around here or even on the arms and it breaks, you get 2 points. And if you hit on the shield and break, that's 3 points. So it's the scoring judges at each end, signal that's 1 point, that's 2 points, that's 3 points. Something we experimented with recently, because that's what we do our big tournaments. But we were doing some smaller stuff, and we're like, you know what? Let's just score it 1 or 0. If you hit and break on the shield, that's 1 point. If you don't break it or you miss or whatever, that's 0 points. And we mainly did that because we didn't have a whole lot of ground crew to keep score and stuff like that. So it's easy. You break it, you get a point. You don't break it, you don't get anything. So we went to that. There are some people that's all they do. If you break it, you score a point. If you don't break it, you get none. If you break it into a whole bunch of pieces, you get more points than if you just broke it in one piece. So it just totally depends on what the tournament organizer has set up. But generally, we try and do the 1, 2, 3 thing, even though it's a little bit more complex and you need to have more people involved in watching and scoring.
Okay.
So you talked about hitting a horse, and that's a really big no. But is there traditionally armor around your horse?
Yes. Before I mentioned something in that last question, I mentioned something about the helmets being a field helmet. So when you think of armor, there's in equestrian sports, particularly 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, there are tournament sports and there's war. Well, there's different armor for that. Now, if you asked me the question about I'd ever seen a UFO. If an alien landed on the planet today and looked around at all these four-wheeled conveyances zipping around and everything, to them, they all look the same. But we know that some of them are good for racing. Some of them are good for hauling things. Some are fairly maneuverable. Some are not. Well, that's the same thing with armor. Most people today look at armor and they see armor. They can't tell what century it's from. They can't tell what the purpose of it was. But every piece of armor has a very specific job, and a collection of armor has a very specific job. So the armor that you would wear if you were in a war is very flexible. The whole concept of if you fall off your horse, you can't get back on is nonsense. You don't have to have a crane to get up. I always say that if you could do a standing backflip and you had armor that was custom made for you, you could do a standing backflip in armor. If you fall over, you can get back up easy. You can run a marathon. I did a tournament once up in Michigan a few years ago, and on one of our breaks, it was at a county fair. And during one of the breaks, we were walking around. We went to go get something to drink or eat, and we were wearing our armor because the next session was coming up. We didn't have time to take it off. There was a Marine recruiter there, and he had a pull-up bar, and we're like, "So what's that there for?" They said, "Well, it's to see if you can pass the physical fitness test." And I was like, this goes back to me being 5'8" and 155 pounds. Okay, I was under 5 feet tall until I was a senior in high school. I was always the littlest guy. I got picked up on the most. But when we did the physical fitness test, guess who always won the pull-up contest? Because my strength to mass ratio was so high. So I go out there and they're like, okay, you got to be able to do 9, I think it was. And I'm wearing 65 pounds of armor. And I go up there and I'm like, 1, 2, 3. And I'm doing 11. Okay. So the armor is flexible. And that's what we call field armor or war armor. Most of the people who joust wear field armor, as opposed to tournament armor, jousting armor. That is armor that is made for a specific activity. Jousting armor, you're going down a tilt, might be 100, 200 feet long. You're not turning. You don't care who's behind you. And it's heavy because they kept ratcheting up how big the horses were, or how big the lances were, how powerful the lances were, how powerful the horses were. They escalated that. So the armor got bigger and heavier and thicker. And you might know the classic, unfortunately, I don't think I've got something I could show you. I don't think I've got something I could show you. It's out in my shop. But there is a very ubiquitous, very common helmet called a frogmouth helm that is a jousting helmet. You would never wear that on the field because you can't see behind you. You don't know. You can't turn your head. Whereas, if you look on my website, the pictures of me, they're the main pictures. I'm wearing a 15th century, late 15th century German Gothic type of Saleh and Bever. I can turn around and look. I'm flexible. I can turn around and look behind me. You need that for war. You don't need that for a tournament. So back to your question. Yes, you can. There is armor that you can put on a horse, but most of the time that armor was used in war. You don't see it very often in a tournament situation because they don't necessarily have to have it. because the tilt's in the way, or we're not trying to hit the horse. What you will see is the armor that's on their face, which is called a chamfron. There might be armor on the back of their neck called a crennet, because that is above the tilt and could make the horse vulnerable. But full-on armor for a horse is more likely going to be seen in a war type situation than in a tournament type situation. Now, that being said, we do hold tournaments that are mock battles today. The gentleman that I told you about that lives in Germany, his name's Arne Kutz. One of the things he does each year is an event at his place called the Feldlager, and it's a reenactment event that's late 15th century, and they have foot people on the ground with weapons. You have mounted cavalry, and they do mock battles with one another. And each year, more and more people are building armor for their horses. Steel armor is actually a much later thing. You generally see that in the 16th century. Like you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and you see all the armor there. Almost all the horses there have steel armor on. But more likely it was boiled leather that was painted really fancy or something like that. Especially in earlier years in the 15th century, some of them did wear metal plates, but that was less common. It became more common later on, just like there were more metal plates on the rider or the armored person. More plates started showing up the later you go from the 1066 all the way to the 16th century. There's more plates of armor being added, more protection, and they had the technology to make them work better together. So in jousting, we rarely see armor on horses, number one, because it's not needed. And number two, when we do want to use it is because it looks cool. We want to make it, because a lot of us make this stuff ourselves and we want to learn how to do something. So we'll go learn how to make armor for a horse, and we'll do a YouTube video about it and stick it up on YouTube, that sort of thing.
So nowadays you don't have a blacksmith next door and you can say, hey, Arthur, make me a helmet or something. So where would you traditionally, or not traditionally, but buy your armor, and what would it cost?
Okay. So there are a number of outstanding armorers in the world. We've got several here in the United States. We've got some in Canada. There's several in Australia, a lot around in Europe. One of the most prolific armor centers in the world right now is Ukraine. Interesting thing about they are very good at this, and it's not just armor for jousting, but armor for another sport called the Bay Horde, which you may have come across, where there's a bunch of groups of 1-on-1, 5-on-5, 25-on-25, I think it is. In fact, there's going to be a national or international competition happening here in just north of Houston here next month for that organization, and they make a lot of armor for that. They're not specifically jousting armors, but they can make jousting armor. An interesting thing about that, they were well known before the war happened. When the war happened, they switched over to making weapons for the war, and some of their shops got bombed. These armor makers. I mean, how medieval is that? There's people making arms and armor, but they had switched over to making things like the welding together I think they're called hedgehogs, the things that keep tanks out of an area. Then they were taking, some of them were making titanium armor, and they were grinding the titanium down into powder and using that because it burns so hot, things like that. And some of them that were closer to the front line actually got attacked. And then they moved further back. They're back to making armor again. And a lot of folks are, helping them out because they lost a lot in the war. And so they're helping them out. To answer your question on how much is armor, you could ask the same thing of how much is a car. And, a Volkswagen Beetle is going to be a different cost than a Lamborghini, so or a Bugatti Veyron or something like that. So it depends. You can get into it from free to as much as you want to spend. I know people who have armor that's $30, $40, $50,000. And a meme that I created the meme, but my friend, the one that the attorney that I was talking about earlier that found out about the insurance, he summed up jousting as jousting is a sport where two people sit on their horses at each end of the tilt and they throw their wallets at one another. Of course, that can be said about just about every horse sport. But, my armor is an example. You can see me in my armor on the website. My armor was made by a friend of mine for himself, and he decided to sell it. And I bought it without a helmet. I made the helmet myself, but the rest of the armor, I bought it from him. I tweaked it a little bit because we are quite different in size. He's about 6'2", I think, and I'm 5'8". Surprisingly, it fit me really, really well, but I needed to tweak a couple of things. And he sold that to me for $2,000. And so that's the other end. If you didn't have access to a friend who could help you make it, some people make their own armor. I've kind of made a cottage industry of taking stuff, because you can buy armor off the shelf now. You can go on Amazon and buy armor that can be modified to work to do this, but you got to know what you're buying. But a lot of it is it's generically made. It's not custom made for you. The best armor is custom made for you, just like a suit. And I've kind of made a cottage industry out of taking these off the shelf, off the rack pieces of armor and modifying them to fit better, to work better, and to protect better for what we're doing with them. So you can actually get into it for fairly inexpensive, $2,000-$3,000 on the low. But like I said, I know people who have spent $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on armor, and it looks like it. It's gorgeous, and there's everything in between. The cool thing about our community is we're always about helping each other out. I've got loaner armor. When somebody comes to me, they don't have a horse. Most of the time they don't have a horse. They don't have armor. I loan them my horse. I loan them loaner armor until they figure out what kind of what it feels like to wear armor, what armor period and location they like. And, and then they'll go off and hire somebody to do it. Sometimes it takes about 6 months to a year to get on somebody's waiting list, and then maybe 6 months to a year to make it. But with these armors in Ukraine, they're cranking that stuff out fast, and it's inexpensive, and it's excellent. It's excellent stuff. So they're bringing the market down a little bit, but there's also a great resale market for it. I could sell my armor right now for probably 2 or 3 times what I paid for it. And of course, there's maintenance that you have to do with it as well. But, there are places that you can go and get it within a matter of weeks and then spend another few weeks modifying it. And you could be out jousting and do it for less than $2,000, $3,000.
So the lances you had mentioned earlier about the different woods and stuff, and that you would spend more money on food than you would replacing lances and stuff at a tournament. Is that sort of thing where everybody has the base, and this is my base, and then the tournament supplies the last 3 feet, the tips or something, or? So
I told you before about the foam jousting. That's how we still do it with foam jousting. The event will provide the tips, but you have to bring your cardboard tubes and your bases. With wooden lances, the event organizer provides them because we want to stick to a standard. We would like for them to all be, they have to be the same length, or else you have an advantage if you have a longer lance. So they all have to be the same length. So we provide, at all the tournaments I do and all the tournaments that I've ever been to, the organizer provides the wooden lances and the tips. And the tips have been the tournaments in Denmark. they went down to their local equivalent of Home Depot and bought 3-foot long handles for brooms. And they scored them in certain places so they'd break blunt. But the lances that I have, which well, I'll tell you the rest of it in a minute. The lances that I have, I hired a wood turner up in the Northeast, and I ordered 40 of them because that was the minimum, and they were $40 a piece. And I gave him the specs, and he hand turned all of them. But I say hand turned; they're identical. They are absolutely identical. And that's what I have been using over the last 20 years. Or actually, no, let me go back. For the last 14 years. And I have, some of them have broken, and I've replaced those. I bought some new ones. But the funny thing about it is I was watching some period drama on TV, and I saw one of my lances up there because I designed them. I had them made, but I have a friend of mine who lives in Mississippi, in Laurel, Mississippi. I said, look, I don't want to, people are coming to me to buy these. I don't want to have an online shop or anything like that. Do you want to sell them? And so he's selling them. I don't get a cut or anything like that, but he sells them. And I was watching some TV show, and there was somebody having a joust, and they had my lances. And then somebody sent me a video the other day of something, of a tournament up in Canada, I think it was, and they're using my lances. So they've shown up in several places. So yeah, it's the base is 8.5 feet long. Yeah, 8.5 feet long, and then the tip is 3 feet long. And then there's aluminum. We call it a ferrule. There's an aluminum ferrule that's 8 inches long. It slides on the end of the lance, and then we got the frangible tip that goes in it. Ideally, it's just the frangible tip that breaks, but sometimes the lance itself will break. Because of shipping, we had to have the lances made in 2 pieces, and it has a mortise and tenon joint that's circular, and it tends to break there. It'll rot out there and break there, and sometimes you'll hit really hard and you'll walk away and you've got just a little piece in your hand. Doesn't happen very often, though.
So when you're riding your horse, obviously the lance would weigh a little bit more when it's horizontally angled when you're about to hit your opponent versus vertically. But what would you think the weight was if it was laying horizontally? How much would it weigh a little bit different?
I'm not quite sure I follow your question, but let me tell you about the experiment that I did. If you just took my lance and put it on a scale, it weighs 3.5 pounds with a tip in it. It weighs 3.5 pounds. When I was down in Australia and we were making lances, the tournament down there, the tournament of St. Ives that I went to, is what we call a historical solids tournament. And historically, generally what you would do is, for lances, you'd go out into the forest, you'd look for a tree that was naturally shaped like a spruce tree, naturally shaped like a lance. Lime trees were also used, which is maybe about 3 inches in diameter at the base, tapers up 15 feet tall, and you cut that thing down and you knock all the limbs off of it, and then you cut it to the length that you want. And then you put we haven't talked about this yet, but there is a device on the end of the lance called a coronel, in the joust of peace, or the joust à plaisance, which is why I named my company à plaisance. It means for pleasure, for fun. That's the name of my company, for fun. That's the tournament joust, and I could go into more detail about that later if we want to. But the coronel distributes. It's a safety mechanism, and it's like 3 leaves of steel, and when it hits, it sticks into the shield, and doesn't skip off, which helps the lance break. You want the lance to break, not just to score, but when it breaks, that's where the energy goes. If it hits and bends and doesn't break, that energy's got to go somewhere. And generally it goes into the person getting hit. And that's where unhorsings could happen, or where you get laid back pretty hard. It's when the hard hits happen, is when the lance does not break. Just lost my train of thought. What was your question again?
He was talking about how much it feels like it weighs in your hand when you have it extended.
Right. So we were making these lances in Australia. What they did is their 2x4s are bigger than our 2x4s. They don't call them 2x4s. They are big enough that you can cut it straight. So they'll go out and they'll buy one that's 12 feet long. Of course, it's in meters, 4 meters, whatever. And then they'll cut it in half all the way down the line. So you get, in essence, a 2x2. Okay. They're bigger than that, though. And then we would go at it with power planes and routers, and we would shape it into a lance type object. So while we're doing that, I'm picking it up and I'm like, man, this feels lighter than my lances. This feels really good. I wonder how much these weigh. So as a jouster, everybody who travels with armor has a luggage scale with them, because you don't want to go over 50 pounds or else you'll get charged more by the airline. So everybody's got a luggage scale. I had my luggage scale with me, even though I wasn't traveling with armor at that particular point. And I was trying to weigh it, found the balance point, and then weigh it. And I was like, okay, yeah, that weighs about 3 pounds, 2.5, 3, 2 3/4, 3 pounds. And then I set it down and I'm like, I know, because of, math, figuring out arcs and stuff like that it's going to weigh more when it's down. And, the fulcrum is your hand. And I'm like, I wonder how much it weighs, because it feels heavier when it's down. So what we did was we had sawhorses out, got a sawhorse, got a bungee cord, and we attached it. We had 2 sawhorses set up a few feet apart from each other. We laid the lance on it. And then where you would grip the lance with your underarm, we took the bungee cord and put that. That's where it would be gripped. So that's technically the fulcrum. Yeah, fulcrum. And I put the scale where the handle was, and I lifted up on it, and I looked at it. Now, we've got some of the best jousters in the entire world are at this tournament. And I asked every single one of them that were there, how much do you think this thing weighs? No one got anywhere close. And I said, we're in Australia. I said, it's almost 25 kilograms. And they're like, what? Nobody realized it was that heavy. Now, that did not have the steel cornell on the end. So you had the steel cornell on the end, and that, it only weighs about 1.25 ounces, 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces. But when it's 12 feet out, there's a lot more, and there's a formula for that. You'll learn it in school, coming up in high school, I bet. It adds another few pounds. So it jumped up to like, I can't remember, but it was like maybe 55 pounds, something like that. And everybody was amazed at how much heavier it was, but it's because the fulcrum is not in the middle of that lance. It's way back to where your arm is. And another interesting note about, there was one tournament I went to where they had balanced the lances so well that the balance point was at your hand. And it was the worst tournament I'd ever been at, because as you're jousting, it's you just put your hand on it. It's perfectly balanced. You really want it tip heavy, because as you were going down the tilt, you may not even notice it, but your horse is slightly speeding up or slightly slowing down, some more than others. And the problem is that when that happens, if they speed up, it pushes you back, and it will make the tip go up and you'll miss. Or if the horse slows down, you'll pitch forward and your lance will go down and you could hit somebody in the crotch. So it's some of the worst jousting I had ever seen was the first day that we were jousting, because people were trying to get used to these lances. And once we figured out what it was, everybody started, instead of holding it at the lance, they moved it their hand way back. and was holding. So it'd be tip heavy. And then the jousting improved. So there's a lot of little things like this that people would never even think of, even jousters. It's like nobody knew how much it weighed when it was down. Nobody knew that, or very few people knew that you didn't want a perfectly balanced lance. So those are some of the things that we learned as we go through this. It's kind of experimental archaeology is what a lot of people refer to it as. So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
So from my work with bits and stuff, I'm kind of an expert on leverage. That would actually be a third class lever, which is the most ineffective type of lever. But it's also how our muscles are attached to our bones. So like your bicep attaches right here at this end, and then all of this, your forearm is all leverage working against you to pick up whatever is in your hand. So but that's a third class lever, is what that is. Yes, sir.
So an interesting point on that, going back to talking about women jousting. I teach the levee. First thing I teach you when you come out here is we're on the ground. I give you a lance. I tell you all this stuff that I've been telling you, and I show how to do the levee. The way I teach the levee, back up a little bit, is you salute, you bring it down, you put the lance underneath your arm, you slowly lower it down the tip from up here to down here, because your opponent's always going to be on your right. You pass right shoulder to right shoulder. You slowly lower it down here. Then after the break, you move it horizontally over, and then you get your arm up underneath it and you lift it up. That I have found out teaching women and men how to joust, that's the easiest way for women, for men to do it, is to come down at an angle, go over and back up. Our forearm muscles and our biceps and triceps work better like this. So we do it like this. This is the way that I was taught, was to lift it back up like this. But women, and Melissa, the one that gave me the t-shirt I was mentioning earlier, she told me that that's really hard for her to do, that it's much easier for her to bring it back up the way she put it down at that 30 to 45 degree angle. And I had discovered that for the majority of women, it's easier for them to lift it up across their body than it is to do this. So there's some slight subtle differences between how women joust, how they handle their lance, and men joust. The end result's still the same, but that was one of the things that I learned, is that it's a lot easier for women to pull it straight back up than to do this. Guys tend to do that.
I have a couple of more horse-centric questions for you. So your original horse for this was a quarter horse, and we're talking about force equals mass times acceleration squared, and you're only going 60 feet. So the quarter horse is the king of accelerating up to 60 feet. And so we're thinking about these big, warm blood crosses and all that stuff, but is a quarter horse actually an advantage there because of the acceleration?
Only if you choose to use it that way. The very best horse, now we see a lot of, you said warm bloods, but it's mainly draft and draft crosses that you see jousting in the United States. Couple of reasons for that is that you can get a retired draft horse from the Amish for pretty cheap. So you see that they're cold-blooded, they're laid back, they're easy to work with. All they got to do is go in a straight line and stop, over 100, 200 feet. So so you see a lot of those. People look at that and go, "Oh, it's a great big horse. It's a war horse." No, that's a tractor. If you were out in a war type situation, you don't want a tractor. You want it's funny. You want a Mustang, a Corvette. The irony is I can't say Mustang because people think, oh, Mustang. But that's true too, because it's got Spanish blood. A Mustang has Spanish blood. The best horses to do this are Iberian horses, Lusitanos, Andalusians. They're the best ones to do this because that's what they were bred for. Now, having said that, quarter horse is really good at maneuvering. They're great at a melee. Lucky was phenomenal at the melee. He had moves. Once he figured out the game, he started doing moves that I didn't ask for because he knew it would put me in a better position to hit my opponent. He figured that out on his own. One time I got a compliment from one of the international jousters when he met Lucky. He says, "Lucky's a smart horse." And I said, "Thanks." And he goes, That's not a compliment because smarter horses are more difficult to work with. So Lucky was really good at certain things, but he was a smart aleck of a horse. So having to deal with that was one thing, but he taught me a lot. Tinkerbell, we tease people that had these great big tractor type horses, but Tinkerbell's a Friesian Percheron cross. That's two draft horses, that are cart horses, So the reason I got her was because I had known her for a year. I'd seen her at these other events, and then I overheard her owner saying something about wanting to get rid of her. And so before the end of the day, I tried my saddle on her. I tried my trailer on her, and they both fit. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy another horse. And then on the drive home, talked to, my wife and I talked about it, and she's like, I think you ought to get her. And I got her. And then about 2 years later, I found out that she was featured on an episode of Animal Cops Houston. She had been abused. She had been below a condition 1. She was skin and bones, had a 4-month-old foal. And if you go look at the Oplaisance YouTube channel, and I've got a copy of it up there. It says Tinkerbell's story, and it tells her story of what happened. But I got her because she was perfect for what I wanted to do. And even though she's not a Spanish horse, she is we kind of frown on Friesians because they're not built to do this. They've got long backs and high headsets, which are bad for jousting. But for some reason, God gave her the genes to be good at a lot of things. And she's more collected and rounded than she should be for her breed. And she's now kind of the grande dame. I consider her the grande dame of jousting in the United States because of that. So, we don't see a lot of great big horses. The best horses tend to be Spanish breeds. But, when somebody asks me what's the best horse for jousting, it's the one that enjoys doing it. We've had horses that didn't enjoy doing it, and so we're not going to make them do it. But the ones that do enjoy doing it, Tinkerbell loves doing it. And if you're a beginner on her and you get at the end of the tilt and you got to put a lance in your hand and somebody shows up at the other end of the tilt, it's all you can do to keep her from going. She's like, let's go. I want to do my job.
So I would assume you would want them to be on the left lead. So they're leaning into the fence essentially as you're heading down there.
Now we'll get into some technical stuff about why. You are correct, but there's always an exception. If you're just going to, jousting, go as fast as you can, hit the guide, keep going. Okay. Yeah, that's level 1. But after you've been doing this for a few years, you want to fine tune everything. At the stage that an advanced jouster is, they're watching their opponent coming toward them. They're seeing what the sine wave that the horse is doing at a canter, or at the top or the bottom of at the bottom of the trough, or at the top of the peak. Where are they? Do I need to slow up, slow down, or speed up? You're watching stuff like that. What lead am I on? I tend to start off at a left lead. There's a book that was written in the 15th century by the King of Portugal, Dom Duarte. And one of the things that he says in there, and I don't know anybody who can do this consistently, it is a very complex thing to do, is that you start off on one lead, at the left lead. I'm sorry. I always get this mixed up because it's really difficult. But what you do is, let me think about this. No, you start off on the right lead. You start from the right lead, and you're going down. And just at the moment of impact, you switch to a left lead. So they've got that outside, we call it, remember, the tilt is the fence. It's not a fence. The tilt is the action side. So that right, let's say the right hind, the outside hind switches, and they're pushing off with that right hind, and that puts more power into the hit. And medieval reenactment, when you're doing sword fighting, you don't, when you're holding a sword and holding a shield, you don't just swing with your arm. You're putting your hips into it. And you're pushing off that right, whether it's fencing or whatever. You're pushing off with your right foot. And you're pushing, you're all the way down grounded, and you're putting all that power from the ground up to hit. Well, if you can do that with your horse, that's awesome. You're going to break that lance. It's going to be a spectacular hit. So he says, switch leads at the moment of impact. Of course, you could switch leads at the moment of impact, but what's your opponent doing? Is he at the right spot? Is he at the right point in that wave? All these things are really, really complex. I tend to do a left lead, but I am kind of thinking about switching. And I don't think that you use these terms in Western, but I'm not sure. Do you know what a renvers and a travers is?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So there is some logic to doing one or the other while jousting. And the fellow that I mentioned earlier who lives in Germany, Arna, he does a lot of work on that. There's some other people in the world that do that. We're kind of just getting into that around in our community here in the United States, particularly in the Texas area where most of the jousters in North America are. We're experimenting with, and we're teaching ourselves how to do I believe it's a renvers, so that we are on we're on a lead, but we're bent in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can, there are advantages to do that, but we're still in exploration mode right now of how best to do that. We don't ride in a straight line. Horses don't ride. You always want them bent one direction or another. And there are advantages depending on what you're doing, but when you're on the tilt, at a high level of jousting, you are really fine tuning everything your horse is doing as you're going down, speeding up, slowing down. Best head I've ever had is a friend of mine here named Sean, who lives here in the Austin area. And we were coming at each other, and we rated so that we were both doing this at the same time. And we both were pushing off, our horses were pushing off on their right hinds just as the tips were hitting the shield. Huge explosion of tips. And we knew instantly that we had made a perfect pass. And we shattered those lances to a bazillion pieces. And we knew when that happened, we were both, after the hit, we were like, yeah, as we were going down to the end of the tilt. And that's what we're striving for, is that perfect pass. It was just amazing. And I've not done that since. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. But that's what that's what we're aiming for.
I did have the question of whether or not the horse was kind of on autopilot, like a bulldogging horse, and they're just going to follow this pattern down the fence. But no, y'all are really.
Well, yes and no. The thing is, like, I'll use Lucky as an example. He did this. I'll use Tink as an example. I tend with Lucky especially, and maybe I'm just thinking about, because we trained one another to joust at the same time. We were both fairly green. He's a Dock Bar. He was a Dock Bar quarter horse that somebody tried to turn into a dressage horse. We bought him as a dressage horse. He excelled. I remember one time I was in an arena and a horse got out. It was an open-ended arena. It didn't have a fence around it. But I had a fence around 3 sides. One of the short sides was open. And we were trying to catch this mare that had gotten away, and she was really green and didn't like anything. Like to be caught. And I was in the middle of a dressage lesson on a dressage saddle. And I said, come on, Lucky. We went to the end of the arena, stood in the center of the arena, and I loosened up myself as much as I could. And I grabbed the gullet, and I'm like, she started running at him. I said, do your thing. I'd never ridden him as a cutting horse, but that was in his genes. And I held on. That horse gave me whiplashes going side to side. He was so good at it. And he did it. And he was also our boss horse. No mare. I don't know what he had, but he was in charge of all the girls whenever they were here. And I just let him do his thing. And that horse tried to get out at the end of the arena, and he would not let her out. and I just was a passenger, man. He did his job, and I had not trained him to be a cutting horse. He did it because he naturally could do that. But where I am with Tinkerbell now is she knows her job, and I push the button. Actually, what I do is I take this, quite literally, is I'm taking the emergency brake off. That's what it is. I'm down there. Mm-hmm. She's revving that engine. I can feel her rotate, just this wave. And I reach down and let her go, and she takes off, and she's kind of on autopilot. And then I do she does her job from the waist down. She does her job, and from the waist up, I do my job with the lance. And so we make a really, really good team. So that's really helpful. I don't have to ride every stride, but I can if I need to.
Yes, sir. What are some of the most common injuries? You said that you can't really feel much of it. You can get some type of injuries when you get hit in certain places, but what are some of the most common ones?
The most common thing that we see are hand injuries, and a lot of times it's jamming your thumb, your right thumb. Depending on the hand grip, the grip on the lance, sometimes it's like, the back end of the lance might be 2.5, 3 inches in diameter, but there's a cut in recess. I'm trying to describe this for the audience that's just listening. It's kind of cut in. It's only about 1 inch in diameter. So that leaves a shoulder in the front and the back. And if you've got your hand up against that shoulder in the front and you hit really hard, it jams your thumb. So we need to hold our hand lower in the hand grip, so we got some room for the hand to move and it doesn't slam into that shoulder. For me, the thing that I've been hurt the most with is that. In fact, I've got a little bit of stiffness in my right thumb. Every once in a while, it catches just a little bit. I'm sure I've got some arthritis in there by now. So there's that, and it tends to be more hand injuries. I'm trying to think. I do remember that there were some injuries at a tournament in Europe when they first started doing historical solids. Our lances, so sometimes you'll see on a lance, you'll see that trombone looking bell thing in front of your hand. That's called a van plate. And our lances, we tend to not use them. They look really cool. They do add a little bit of balance behind the balance point. I like the way they look. I just can't find somebody. I had a few of them, but they've disappeared over the years, and I can't find somebody new to make them. I really like the way they look. I like the way they handle. They look right. But there was a tournament that they were doing historical solids that I was talking about before that have steel coronels. Our coronels are urethane rubber. They kind of stick and are kind of anti-skid, but they don't stick, embed themselves in the crotch. But they do kind of grab and hold a little bit more than just a bare wooden tip. They had ordered van plates to fit on these lances, and they didn't arrive in time. So they were jousting without van plates. Now, their hands were armored properly, and their arms, everybody's armored. It's like football pads. I mean, it's there for a reason. It does its job. And in that tournament, 2 people, in fact, there's a video of it happening. They had a GoPro on one of the lances. So you got an up close view of it hitting the other person. They cut it before it actually hits them, though. And the lance, these are very, very experienced jousters, and so they were doing everything perfect. And the lances came down. They were very close to one another, and they slid along one another, and they came up, and one of them got hit right here, right in the web of their thumb with one of those steel coronels, and it split all of that. And they had a gauntlet on, but the gauntlet's not really made to protect all of that. That happened, and then later on in the tournament, it happened to another person. So both of them had to drop out because they had to go to the emergency room and get that fixed. And that's, in competitive jousting, you just don't see that many injuries. Now in the the type of jousting that I was mentioning before, that is engineered for unhorsings, people get hurt when you come off a horse, even if it's a stunt roll. There's not a lot of people that do much of that stunt type jousting, like medieval times and, the choreographed stuff, that are into their 30s, because it's really hard on your body. Doing a stunt roll coming off a horse, there's a way to do it, but it ends up your knees start to complain, your hips start to complain after a while. So that's an injury that ends up happening. That's a repetitive stress injury. But this other style that's specifically made for unhorsings, some people refer to it as American solids. There have been a lot of injuries in those. There have been concussions. There have been broken ribs. There have been major hematomas. One guy says that he got hit so hard that his heart stopped, stuff like that. I'm of the opinion that if stuff like that's happening, you're doing it wrong. If you're getting injured doing this, something's not right and you need to fix it. So that's what we do. If we run into a situation where there's a repetitive injury, or it's like, okay, what's causing it? Let's fix that. So, short answer to your question is thumbs. In my experience, thumbs and hands.
For some reason in my mind, it clicked that shoulder dislocation for some reason would be a little more common than it is. But has that actually happened in your experience?
That's a really good observation, and that that makes a whole lot of sense. The interesting thing is it is more likely to happen if you come off the horse than it is for when you're jousting. I actually don't know of anybody who has gotten a dislocated left shoulder doing this, or even gotten injured in their left shoulder. Your left shoulder is the most armored, next to maybe your head, of anything on your body. For those of us who ride in field armor, your left shoulder is by far the most armored thing, and there's plenty of things in there to absorb that hit. Again, where things are powerful is when the lance does not break, and that happens. That does happen, and you feel it. But you've got armor. You got your breastplate that comes up, over here on the left side, which is fairly heavy. Then you've got shoulder armor that's either called a pauldron, which covers a bigger area, or what's called a spottler, which covers the point of your shoulder. But then you might have a rondelle type object over your armpit. Your armpit is the thing that you were, in this situation, protecting the most, because between the outside of your and your underarm to your heart is only a few inches. So if something goes in there, you're out pretty quick. There's also the brachial artery that goes up underneath here, which is one of the major arteries. If you cut that, you can bleed out in a very short period of time. In the Dom Duarte, or I'm sorry, not in the Dom Duarte book. There's another book that has an extant account of a tournament, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. I drew a blank on it, where two people got hit in their forearm, where a broken piece of lance went into their forearm. The first guy died because when it happened, they went up and pulled it out, and he bled to death. The next guy, this happened, I think, over a period of 6 weeks. The next guy that got hit got a broken lance into their arm. They left it in, and he didn't die. And I think they were able to fix it. Or at least he didn't die at the moment. But you were so well protected on this side, and the shield that we use, the accroche, is curved, and it lays on your shoulder in such a way that it kind of keeps it from going up, keeps it from going down. It hits, it tends to go out away, and when it breaks, the pieces go out that direction. It directs it to the inside. But that thing is free floating, more or less. It's a strap around your neck and around your arm, but that absorbs a whole lot of the impact. And then what's underneath it, kind of got an air gap underneath it, that absorbs it as well. But I don't know of anybody who's even complained. Now that I think about it, I'm sure there is, but not that I can think of off the top of my head where anybody's complained about getting hit and hurt in the left shoulder. Now I have occasionally it'll hit and skip off and go over and hit underneath your armor on your right shoulder. But even then, I've gotten hit there a few times, and I'll take my armor off, and there'll be a bruise over here, and I'm like, "Oh, something must have skipped over it. I didn't notice it."
So is that like the jouster's curse? May all your opponents score a 1?
No. We want our opponents to do good. I mean, I kind of hesitate to call them opponents. I always say that jousting is a team sport. Most people think it's you and your horse against the other person and their horse. I frequently say that it's a combination of the four of you that are working together to make the best pass possible. And we want both of us to have that big explosion and make the best points. But, at the end of the day, we're also like, oh, man, I lost by 1 point. There's that. There, of course, is that.
At least you're not allowed to say, hey, I went easy on you, because you're both trying to get hit.
Yeah, you do not want to say that to somebody. Now, you might do that because if your opponent's having a hard time, a person you're riding against, if you see, this is another thing that we do. If you see that they're having a difficult time, like their horse is out of balance, or their horse might be crow hopping, or they can't, the wind caught their lance and blew it back, or they got handed up wrong by the ground crew. All those, if they're having a hard time, we put our lance off to the side. We will not hit them. Even if their shield is perfect and ready to be hit, if they're not set, we're not going to hit them. We call that a mercy pass. Sometimes they'll ask for it. They'll put their lance off to the side and say, please don't hit me. But that's not a guarantee that they'll do it. It's also not a guarantee that your opponent will see it in time, because sometimes we're really focused on that target. So
I'll ask you my last question, and then I'll leave the last one or two for Colt here.
You bet.
You did mention earlier about a special replica saddle that you have, and I have seen a few movies. I don't know how accurate they were, but we'll assume they were reasonably accurate. And it does look like the jousting saddle it kind of has you laid back a little bit. Is that accurate or no? What makes a jousting saddle a jousting saddle?
So they don't really lean back. They do have more of a cantle than you would typically see, like on a Western saddle or something like that. An interesting thing, it's not a period saddle, but it does look like a period saddle. But it's more or less a McClellan, sort of, with just something medieval over the top of it. And that was for the Prince Caspian movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Prince Caspian movie. They made a bunch of saddles. And somebody in the community lives in California, has connections to prop shops. And they ended up selling a lot of those. And she collected, I don't know, like 20 or 30 of them and sold them off to a bunch of people, did historical reenactment. And some of them were background saddles. Some of them were fancier ones in the foreground. So a lot of jousters in the United States are using those because they look medieval. But a true medieval saddle, and when I say I'm gonna concentrate on a 15th century, like a late 15th century, mid to late 15th century. It's called a war saddle. There's several examples all around the country, all around the world. They do have some beautiful extant examples in Europe that some researchers, some people, they're jousters, have gone and done the research, made the measurements. We've got connections to a lot of museums. We've got jousters who are curators of some of the best armor collections in the world. And so we've got a very high level of pristine access to some of these extant pieces that we can measure and look at and see how things were made. So they did that a few years ago, like 10, 12 years ago now, I think. Took measurements and started making them. And what's unique about these is most saddles, let's use, since you're most familiar with it, let's use a Western saddle. And when you think of the bars on a Western saddle, imagine how they look, okay? You still got a similar bar like that with the right twist, and it's set up to fit your across your horse's back and everything. But on the ends, they come way down, like maybe that much, so for the people who aren't watching this, it's probably like 8 inches. And that goes along the rib cage of the horses. So what that does is it makes, so if you're just looking at just the tree, you've got, it dips down in the front behind their shoulders, comes up with this upside down U, comes around in front of their flanks, and then goes back up and is symmetrical on the other side. In a Western saddle and an English saddle, where your leg is, there's a lot between you and your horse. There's that on a Western saddle, there's at least the leather. There's, the girth strap is in there. You've got the pads and all that sort of stuff. So you've got quite a lot between you and the horse. With these reproduction, these 15th century saddles, you don't have that. A lot of times we don't even have a flap, much less all that other stuff. And so your thigh can be on the horse. Your upper inside thigh can be on the horse. The straps that hold it are not, the girth straps do not attach directly underneath your leg. There's a Y-type system that goes from the front, that's attached to basically the pommel and to the cantle, and then it comes down and the girth attaches lower. So you can be riding with your inside thigh directly on the horse. The bar's not in the way, the leathers aren't in the way or anything. And that brings about, it opens up a whole lot of things that you can do with your horse that we are finding out from, somebody wanted a reproduction saddle. Then we started riding on them and they're like, oh my gosh, the horse can do all this stuff that we couldn't do before. Or we could, the aids are slightly different and in some ways a lot easier. And you can do these medieval maneuvers that are in, the 15th, 14th, 15th, and 16th century manuals about how to ride a horse. All of a sudden, you can do that stuff because of the way the saddle was made. Now, it generally has a high pommel that goes up. It's armor that protects your groin and your upper thighs. It also acts in a way sort of like a knee block would, like maybe an Aussie saddle or other kind of Spanish saddles. On the back, the pommel comes, or the cantle comes up, and it quite literally looks like a pair of hands, that are kind of like a butterfly, that caress your butt cheeks. And it's not very high. It comes up maybe in the middle, maybe at about your tailbone, the top of your tailbone. It doesn't go up very high. And what this does is, and the pommel and the cantle are fairly close to one another. And what this does is when you sit in that, you're in there good. You got your thighs and your knees up against the pommel that goes all the way down in front of your thighs. And you've also got your rear end caressed in the back. So you can bend over, like this is especially true. It's a horse saddle. This is especially true when you're fighting. You can bend over and hit things side to side. You can twist around behind you. You can do all of this stuff around you and stay in the saddle fairly easily. But it also gives you a lot more contact directly with the horse to be able to do some moves that we just don't do today in the equestrian disciplines that we have today. So it's really cool. When I got my first one and started riding in it, I was like, Tinkerbell was doing stuff easier than she had ever done before. And I could use a lot more of my inside thigh than my lower legs. And she picked up on it very, very quickly. And it's really fun to ride in. Really nice. Mine also has steel on the pommel and on the cantle. They're called saddle steels. Or the arçon is another thing, French word for it. Problem is that if I leave them on my saddle and I leave my saddle in my trailer, they rust. So there's some maintenance there. Before I do a show, I take them off, take them in the shop, get all the rust off. Just like we do with any other piece of armor, if we need.
Um, can you elaborate a little bit more on your Most Chivalrous Award and tell us what that entails?
It's always hard to talk about stuff like that because one of the tenets of chivalry is humility. And when you talk about this stuff, it sounds like you're bragging. So it's always a difficult subject to talk about. But I'll tell you what they looked for. Or yeah, and I'll tell you my side of it too. What I try to do when I'm at an event, let me start with there's a group in Belgium, no, in the Netherlands, who is it's an organization that does ground crew, and they are excellent at what they do. They're very good at what they do. They have a handbook, and I was told by one of the members about this handbook. I was like, "Oh man, I would love to get a hold of that handbook. Can you get me a copy?" They said, "Well, it's not in English." And I said, "Well, I can translate it, Google Translate." But I found out that the very first rule in the book, and pardon my language here, but the very first rule, it says all knights are assholes. And it is when you, as a ground crew person, are interfacing with the knight on horseback, they're at the end of the tilt. Their horse is revving up and ready to go. You're in armor. You're in this tin suit, this metal steel suit. You can only see about through a slot in your eyesight. Your ocular is only a quarter of an inch, 3/8 of an inch at the most. You can maybe see the ears of the horse you're riding, but you can definitely see your opponent down at the other end. You can't see the ground crew next to you unless they're holding the lance up in front of you. You don't know what's going on. You have a hard time hearing, so you yell a lot. They may be speaking to you on the ground, but you can't hear them, so they yell a lot. And in that moment, at the end of the tilt, when you put your hand out, that says, "Hand me the lance." If it takes a second for them to put the lance in your hand, it feels like a minute for you because you are so in this thing. You're pulling your horse together. You're about to do something that could be deadly. There's a lot going on in your brain, and you want that lance in your hand instantly. And if there's a delay at all, you get cranky. Okay. I used to be really cranky. My wife used to she didn't want to be ground crew for me. She didn't want to hand up lances because I was being such a jerk, but I learned to cope with all of that and learned how to do better at that. And, but it's true. There's a lot of intensity at the start of the tilt, a whole lot. By the time you get to the end, it's gone. The intensity is gone. And it's worse at the beginning of the tournament than it is at the end of the tournament, especially if you're going overseas. You haven't asked me You haven't asked me this question. First question everybody asks is, do you travel your horse? And the answer is no. You borrow people's horses at the local tournament. And you don't know that horse. And you got to learn how to work with that horse. And sometimes you'll get a day to work with that horse. But, I don't know of a situation where, oh, here's your horse, go joust. But there's a lot of intensity. So the emotions run high, stress runs high. But so what I tried to do, thanks to my wife, was to tone that down. And the way that I did it was, of course, to be much more aware of what was going on. And as I became more experienced at jousting, my stress level went down, understandably. But what I would do is, as soon as I got to the end of the tilt, they hand me up the lance to the ground crew. I said, thank you. I get down to the end and I hand the lance off. I say, thank you. When I go out onto the field, we ride out on the field and are introduced to the audience. I go around on my horse and I go up and I shake every single person's hand on the ground and say, thank you. Because you guys are down here doing all the work. We get to be up on our high horse. Everybody's looking at us. They're not looking at the ground crew. But I want to give them credit for what they're doing because we cannot do a tournament without ground crew. We can't put our armor on by ourselves. We can't pick our lances up by ourselves. We can't do it. We're helpless, So they really make it or break an event. And I want to make sure that they know that they are greatly appreciated. So every tournament, every session I'm out on the field, I go up and shake everybody's hand and I say thank you. I think that's why in Denmark that they did that. But it was kind of in a way a bittersweet thing, because I'm like, me saying thank you was so unusual that they gave me an award for it. And so it's been my goal to try and inspire people to go, hey, be nice to these people, because we wouldn't be here without them. And in all the tournaments, everybody now will, when they're announcing the pairings and all this stuff, they'll say something about the ground crew. They'll tell the audience, they'll introduce the ground crew. At our tournaments, it's not just introducing us and our horses. We introduce the ground crew and say what their job is so that the audience knows. I mean, from my perspective, this show that we're putting on, this competition that we're putting on, if there is an audience, we're not just entertaining them, we're educating them. We're letting them know what jousting is and isn't. No, we don't need a crane to get on. No, we can see pretty well out our helmets. We don't, when we fall over, we can get up, all the misnomers, all the stuff that people have assumed over the years that aren't true. We want to educate them on what the truth is. So
I think it is it's understandable how when you're about to start Mortal Kombat that please and thank you wouldn't necessarily be on your mind. You're pretty focused on yeah. So I get that, but kudos to you for making the extra effort there.
Well,
absolutely.
Oh, and I've been to that tournament in Denmark 3 times. And the last time was 2 years ago, about right now. Yeah, right now. This weekend. Yeah, no, I think about it, it's this weekend. As soon as I got on site, and each, they do it every 4 years. And this last time we did it, out of everybody that was there, the first time we did it was, first time I went was 2012. It's 2012, 2016, supposed to happen in 2020, but for some strange reason, people couldn't travel. And I got it in 2012 and 2016. And when I got there, we did it 2 years ago, so 2023. First thing I did is I went up to the event organizers, who were good friends of ours. But out of everybody who was there in the first one, it was me, my wife, and I think 2 other people had been there in 2012. So there's a lot of changeover. And I went up to him, I said, do not give me that award again. Said, I'm going around making sure everybody knows, hey, be nice to people. Somebody else won it who deserved it. So, but it was all about being courteous and helping. So it's my wife is the one who actually is the MC and runs the face of the tournament. I do the background stuff, the pre-production and stuff. We used to do Most Chivalrous, and we stopped doing it because it is the hardest award to give out now, because everybody is bending over backwards to help one another. And it's like, how do you define this? Mm-hmm. And the last one we gave was not to a jouster, but it was the head of our ground crew. His name's Colin. And he has been with us for so many years. He lives on my property. He has done so much for the community and everything. And he's always there making sure that tips are made and the lancers at the right place at the right time. He trains people from all over the world how to do the ground crew stuff. And it was like, he deserves this. And so the last time we gave it out, we gave it to him. And we haven't given it to anybody since in our tournament.
And save the best question for last. How would one person, like, say, someone who was interested from this podcast and really wanted to see how jousting was like, how would they get into jousting, and what are the clinics like for them?
Okay. There's 2 classes here. There's the people who have never ridden and the people that have. I tend to say, if you want to learn how to joust, I prefer for them to know how to ride. If you can come in and have even some experience in riding, I mean, more than just I used to ride at camp or I rode at my grandparents' place on the weekends when I was a kid. If you are riding regularly, certainly that's the best thing. But I don't frequently get those kind of people. But I get people who are enough in balance to be able to do this. And I've had people like the boys, the video that you saw. He didn't have the experience that I had hoped that he would have coming in. And if you remember from the video, I had him on a horse named Moose, and Moose just completely blew him off. He wasn't listening to him at all. And so I put him on Tinkerbell because I knew he'd listen to Tinkerbell. The reason I put him on Moose is because at the end of it, I was going to joust against him. I wanted to joust on my own horse. But we switched it up, and I put him on Moose, and I put him on Tinkerbell, and I let somebody else ride against him on Moose. So if you have some level of knowledge of how to ride, and you know how to walk, trot, and canter, and you're in balance, at decent enough balance at the three of those, you don't have to be great. But if you have just a basic understanding of how to ride, that's what I prefer, because I'm going to teach you how to joust. I'm going to teach you how to do melee. I'm going to teach you how to do the games. I'm going to teach you everything that we do in one of our tournaments. If you don't have any experience, but you're like I've dreamt of being a knight in shining armor my entire life. I finally have the resources to do this. I want to learn how to joust. I used to say there are a lot of people here in town, in the Austin area, and all over the world, that if you're close to a major metropolitan center, there's somebody who can teach you how to ride. And I said, go work with them. And I'd give some recommendations. Go learn how to ride from them. And I would tell those instructors, this is what I'm looking for. Get them to this point. And it might happen in a couple of months. It might happen in a couple of years. It just depends totally on what your skill set is. But I switched from that recently, and I've started taking on riding students. Some folks who have a little bit of riding experience, but not enough sense of balance to be able to take them to the next level. So what they're doing with me now is I'm actually teaching them how to ride. And I'm teaching them how to ride my horse in my style and my way. And it's starting with groundwork. I start off with groundwork, with natural horsemanship, and I work. That's the foundation. I go up from there. And so these days, if somebody picks up the phone or emails me or whatever, and they're interested in doing it, and they are local to the Austin area, that's the easy button. I can help you out. If you're further away, I can put you in touch with people who can help you ride. I have been known to do clinics in various places around the country and the world, and I can come to you to do that as well. But the key, all the way back to what I said at the beginning, 90% of this is riding. When we get together and practice jousting, very little of it is putting on armor and breaking lances, especially in the summertime. We don't want to put on armor and joust in the summertime. We really don't. Not in Texas. Over in Europe, though, I tell you, most of the tournaments are in July and August, and we go over there. It's 83 degrees. It's like, oh man, this is wonderful. And all the Frenchmen are just like, they're dying because it's so hot. We're like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is wonderful weather. But in Texas, like right now, it's in the upper 90s. But thankfully, the humidity is kind of low today. But I still don't want to be out there jousting. I don't want to put on the armor and do it. I've done it, but I don't want to. But I can put you in touch with people to learn how to ride, because being a better rider is key to all of this. The hitting the person on the other horse is easy. When I do an intro lesson, it's about 2 hours long. I teach you some stuff on the ground, tell you a little bit of history. I do some skills on the ground, put you up on the horse, see how well you ride, and then we add things as we go. My goal, which has happened every single time with anybody new, is to hit the quintain, which is the spinning target that you hit. You go down and you hit the spinning target. It's called a quintain. My goal is to have them hit the quintain with a frangible tip and maybe break it by the end of this 2 hours. And I've done that every single time, even when they're only just barely decent, having barely decent balance on the horse, mainly because Tinkerbells know how to do her job. but that's my goal, and we have achieved that every time. In the case of narrator on The Boys, he was the first person that I was able to do all of that in one day. Now it's 10-hour day, but the video's not nearly that long. But it was a 10-hour day. We did a lot of stuff that day. We had to modify it a little bit at the end because he couldn't see out of his visor. But we had him jousting by the end of the day. And I can't do that with everybody. I did it for that because I'm like, okay, this is a YouTube video. That's the whole point of this, is that this guy jousting by the end of the day. But typically it takes a lot longer to do that. But the key is riding. I can put you in touch with people who can teach you how to ride. And then there's not a lot of people around the country who teach jousting. I do. And there are more competitive jousters between Lampasas, which is just north of Austin, all the way down to Houston. There are more competitive jousters in this area than any place else in the world. And it's all because of this group just kept growing and growing and growing. It started off about, back in 2003. Yeah, 2003, 2004. So that's the best way to do it. Send me an email. If you're hearing this and you want to learn how to do this, get in touch with me and we'll figure out how to make it happen. That's the short answer.
Yeah. And we will, of course, have links to all Steve's stuff where you can find him, his website, YouTube channel. All of that will be in the show notes as well.
My email is the best way to reach me.
Okay. I'll also ask this kind of come up selfishly because, of course, I played rugby in college and all. Like I'm going and hitting somebody with a lance seems like a pretty good time to me. Can your armor, is there like a rack to put it on where it looks like, in your house against the wall, here's this standing knight. So he's going to show us on camera. Because I think I can sell this to my wife if there is, in fact, standing suit of armor. There could be yeah. Oh, yeah.
Be like that.
Yep. Exactly like that.
This needs to be over here.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Got a little bit of rust that I need to take care of, but
uh-huh.
Yeah. and if you need the ammunition, it is an investment. You can sell it pretty much. If you take care of it, you can sell it for at least what you paid for it, because there's a decent market for it. Some situations you could actually sell it for more.
Mm-hmm. Well, we may be having a little conversation with wife after this one. So
here's an interesting thing I'll point out. Amongst the competitive jousters in the world, and especially true here in Texas, most of us are about your age or older. We came to this later in life. Now, granted, you got a kid at home, but a lot of us, kids are out of the house. We've got the resources. We've got the time. We've got the energy. We've got the interest. The average age of somebody doing this tends to be in the later 40s and up. I started when I was 42. I'm 64 now. The oldest person that I taught and who was the oldest when they started, was 62, and they're 67 or 68 right now. There's another fellow who he's halfway through the test. Within the SCA, we have a test that you have to take. He's halfway through it, and by the time he gets authorized, he will be the oldest at 64, I think, 65. And there is a fellow down in Australia. There was a tournament here a few weeks ago. There's a fellow down in Australia who is 80 years old, and he's jousting. And he's been his entire life. He started off as a farrier, so I'm surprised his back can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and the Renfair jousters are a lot younger because they're young and athletic, and they're provided horses, they're provided armor. They don't have to put much into it. But as we've gotten older, most of us have started in our 40s or later. So.
Sounds like a pretty darn good time to me. So, all right. Well, Steve, I certainly want to thank you for your time today, and again, your chivalry in the way that you handled everything with Colt reaching out to you. And I think you're the first fellow falconer who's ever been on the podcast as well. So I really appreciate that about you. We can probably just talk hawks and dogs for another 3 hours, but we'll let everybody go. So, well, thank you much for your time. We've really enjoyed it.
You bet. So, a side note, we should probably try and figure out how. So when I go to this event in March every year, I go through Lafayette every year. I go down I-10.
Oh, yeah.
So we should stay in touch, and I might be able to stop by and say hi and introduce you to Tinkerbell, and
Absolutely.
see if we can figure something out.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That is sort of expo season for me, but definitely if you kind of have a date in mind and a month or two ahead when you're coming through, if I'm in town, then I would love to do that.
I'll tell you, it is spring break week. It's always that middle week in March. And I don't know what the actual dates are, but my birthday is March 13th. And so it's always during my birthday.
Okay.
So, it's generally whatever that week that March 13th falls in is when it's going to be. And I usually go out there, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 or 5 days early to help set things up and stuff, and then come back at the end of the second week. But yeah, I've got your email. We can stay in touch. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, if I'm in town, I'd love to do it. Yeah,
okay.
For sure. So,
Thank you for being on the podcast. It was a very good.
Man, thank you again for reaching out. It's you you need to come to Austin and let me teach you how to joust. Or if we can work this out, I'll come to you.
We got a 40-acre field, so we got the room to set it up or whatever. Absolutely. So
you're the kind of people that we want. Colt, you're the kind of person that I would want to teach how to joust. Let me tell you.
You're the same.
I would love to try to knock you off a horse. That sounds like a good time to me too. So yeah, we can work some father-son stuff out there.
You're not the first father-son that's done that. And let me tell you, Daniel, you better watch out. Most of the time, old age and treachery, in my experience, is not as effective as youth and enthusiasm, but I keep trying.
Well, let's make sure you make it to the feed store. But thank you again for your time. That was a really good episode. So,
all right, cool.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.